Welcome back, Rive Animators. In the previous videos, we've tackled the fundamentals of Rive and either brought in or created our very own awesome assets. But now, things are about to get a little more organized and a whole more powerful. Get ready to dive into the world of artboards and nested artboards. Think of artboards as separate canvases within your Rive project, perfect for organizing complex animations and creating modular designs. And with nested artboards, we can create animations within animations. This opens up a whole new world of possibilities for creating very intricate animations, reusable components, and even interactive games. In this video, we will master the art of artboards, learning how to create, organize, and animate them effectively. We will even explore how, thanks to this organization, we can save tons of time on the Flutter side of things. So, let's get organized and unlock the true potential of Rive with artboards and nested artboards. And don't forget, if you end up liking this video, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you can get notified of more content about Flutter and Rive coming my way. Thank you so much for your support. And with that, let's get started. Hello everyone, welcome to Roman Just Codes. In this video, we're going to continue making progress on our application and all the animations that we're building. And we're going to go deep into artboards and nested artboards. So as we mentioned earlier, artboards are the foundation of your composition across both design and animate mode. As you see, we already have a few artboards on our file. We already have one artboard for each one of the buttons, one artboard for the animation, like the little bouncing ball and the wave hand and the hand waving. So now what I want to do is leverage these two animations in other animations. In this particular case, these buttons right here. And this is the concept of nested artboards. So nested artboards can speed up your workflow by allowing you to reuse animations and state machines. And you can import those same animations inside other animations, allowing you to import one artboard inside another artboard and leveraging all the goodies that you did on that artboard inside of that other one. Another cool thing is that any changes made on that source artboard will be reflected across all those nested artboards. Let me show you exactly how to do that. So in this particular case, we have these two buttons, one for jump, one for wave. And then what I want to do is this artboard right here where I created this animation of a bouncing ball, I want to import it inside of this other artboard. The same thing for this hand wave animation, I want to import it inside of this button. So the way to do it is you go here to the arrangement tools. With this artboard selected, I want to import this one jump animation. And this is the reason why I mentioned earlier that you need to name your artboards accordingly. That way you don't confuse them with one or the other. Name them accordingly. In this particular case, I want to import jump animation artboard inside of my jump button animation inside of that artboard. You select your artboard. You click on nested artboards. With the cursor as a cross, you see the nested artboard icon is highlighted. You place the cursor in the reference point where you want your artboard to be sourced or exactly where you want that to be the origin. So I'm going to select that right here. And immediately you get a pop-up menu showing you the other available artboards in your stage that you can pick from. In our case, we want to pick the jump animation and you just select it and there it is. Now, if I can just shrink it from the corner holding the shift key and then I can position it exactly where I want it. Let's say I want it right there. But if you see, I have there, this is a reference kind of like to that jump animation. If I made any changes to this artboard right here, let's say I don't want it green, I want it red now. If I change it to red right here, you see how cool it is. It actually changes to that. So this is kind of like a reference, like a pointer to that artboard. Any changes that happen in the source artboard are reflected in the nested artboard. So that is one of the coolest features of Rive. So I'm going to undo this change, bring it back exactly the way that it was. And notice this, like I want to change maybe the origin, the actual anchor or pivot point on this nested artboard. Like if I select here, freeze, for example, remember this is the way that you can change the origin or you can change the pivot point. I'm going to select freeze and I'm going to try to do it. It doesn't work in the case of nested artboards. How would I change the origin to, let's say, be changed to the center of the nested artboard? One trick is actually wrap your nested artboard inside of a group. So just press Command G for group, and you see how automatically now you can change the pivot, the origin, that anchor point, you can change it wherever you want. I'm going to leave it exactly where it is. Every time you create a group, it actually creates the origin or the anchor point to the center of all the elements. Like it makes a calculation of where all the elements are, and it's going to try to make the best decision of where the center is. In this particular case, it knows where it is pretty quick, and then it just designates what the center is. Now I can do anything with this artboard, with this nested artboard. I can animate it. Look, I can rotate it as a unit. I can do animations on top of the nested animations that there are. So if I just, by any chance, I just grab this button and then I just flip to animate. Remember, there are no animations to this, but I'm just gonna hit play and let's take a look. So you see, just right off the get-go, my jump button already has and inherits the animations that are part of that nested artboard just because it is a reference to the original artboard, and then I inherit the state machines and all of that. I'm gonna pause this and I'm gonna flip back to design, and you see this button is gonna be, again, like I mentioned, it's just gonna be a simple button. It's gonna have that animation nested in there. Later on, we're gonna be dealing with inputs and listeners and whatnot. We're gonna make this jump button actually be pressed when the user places the pointer over. When the pointer exits, then it's gonna perform another behavior, and we're gonna make it feel and look like an actual button. Instead of using the Flutter buttons in there, the Flutter material buttons, we're gonna be creating our own buttons. So let's just wrap this piece up by adding the second nested animation to the wave button, which is that hand wave. So I'm gonna select my artboard. I am going to go to the arrangement tools menu, select the nested artboard right here, place the icon exactly where I would want it. So I'm gonna select here, and I am going to select hand wave. So I click on hand wave, I shrink it the way that I want it. Let's say I wanna bring it a little bit, shrink it to maybe look a little bit more appropriate according to the size of my button. So I'm going to just bring it like that. And like I did earlier, I can leave it like this if I want. If I'm not going to animate it from there, this is perfectly fine. But let's say I want to change the anchor point again on this nested animation. The way that you do it, remember, use your group. You could just do Command G on your keyboard, and then that's it. It is a group. Remember, the group is just named just the basic group name, but you can just even rename that group and call it hand wave. That way you know that that group, that is what represents, in case that you add other things to it. Same thing for this. I'm just gonna say jump animation, and then that way now if I select my wave button and then I just switch to animate and I press the play button, it's already doing the wave on its own. I didn't do anything else to this button. And all I did was I imported this nested artboard, and it just brought along all the great goodies that it had within it. So that's awesome. Let's just flip back to design, and we can continue on these later. We can just gravitate to those. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna continue leveraging the power of nested artboards and nested animations to create our character. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and do that? So back on our design, this is Mr. Bubbles. This is the character that we will be creating. And if you see right off the gate, you could see like some just basic shapes coming together to make that character. It's nothing really complex. I'm just gonna walk you right through each one of the elements that make up this character. So let's get right to it because we have a lot to cover on this one. So I'm gonna move Mr. Bubbles to the side, and then you're gonna help me build it. Or for example, what I can do is I can just move it here to the side probably. And then I am going to shrink my editor so that it looks pretty much like that. So I'll probably need an artboard that will contain all of those elements, right? So I'm gonna need the one that contains the body and the arms, probably the cheeks and the teeth and all of that. Would you create all of that as a single element? In my case, you can design the whole character, but then you can break it into multiple pieces. Why don't we do that? I'm gonna keep this on the side. I'm just gonna call it full body for now, but I'm gonna start from smaller pieces because this is better. You do divide and conquer, and then you can build those pieces which make up the whole element. And then it's better to animate. Instead of having everything in a single artboard, it's better to compartmentalize, it's better to componentize your design, and then that way you can animate it more freely, independently, and then a lot of those pieces come together to make one cohesive animating sequence and workflow. So why don't we try that? I'm gonna start with the eyes. So why don't we start that? Let's say in my case, I want the eyes to blink. So you want to do the eyes as a separate item. So let's do that. I'm going to create one artboard and I'm going to make it full square. I'll hold the shift key in my keyboard and just drag it to one particular size. I could do an arbitrary size, but I can just do, for example, 600 by 600, and then that would be fine. I'm going to call it eyes. And then let's try that. So with my eyes artboard ready, I'm going to start by creating a basic shape. I'm going to create an ellipse. So I'm going to go to my create tools. I'm going to select the ellipse. Remember the way that we select shift to do a perfect circle. So try to make it big enough, but so that it doesn't cover the whole artboard. You want to give it some breathing room around the artboard like this. I'm going to make this ellipse full white. So I'm going to go to remember, stick in the design mode. Now go to the fills and strokes section and select the color, change it to white just by dragging this selector here in the color palette. And there it is. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the pupils, right? So let's do that. Remember how to copy an existing element? You press Alt and you drag in any direction and then you copy it. So I'm going to press Alt, drag, and there it is. I have another circle. Let's make that circle smaller. Remember, you can either hold Shift so that it can proportionally shrink. So I'm going to make it smaller than the white part of the eye. In this one, I'm going to make it green. So I'm going to copy that same green in there. So there it is. I'm going to pick that light green. There it is. And I'm going to grab that green for the eye, right? Like this. Okay, so it's coming together. I'll probably need to shrink it a little more. Something like that, because I kind of wanted to move around within the white part of the eye, and then I'm going to keep it there. So then let's do now the black portion of it. So I just do Alt and drag, and now I'll shrink it a little bit and put it in place, and I will change it to black, just like this. I think maybe in my design it's a little bit bigger, so let's just do that. I'll stretch it a little. Let's zoom in. You could do Control Plus to zoom in within your artboard. So I'm going to zoom in and there it is. So I think it's coming together. That's awesome. So why don't we do that effect of having that little shine within the eye? So it's just two little white ellipses, one next to each other in kind of that diagonal position. So the same way that I did before, select the topmost element, drag it with Alt, drag it to one side, shrink it a little bit like this, and then I'm going to switch it to the white. I am going to move it, for example, somewhere here. I can probably make it a little smaller like this. I'll keep it in position like this. And just like that, I'm going to create the smaller one by pressing Alt and just dragging. I'll select it, press Alt and drag. And now I'll make the smaller version right there and I can move it maybe with the arrows. If I see that maybe the mouse is blocking me, I can zoom in a little more if you want to go more granular, and then you can just move these around like that. So now what I want to do is I want to make all of these items right here, all of these ellipses, part of the same unit. You remember how to group things and make them as part of the same unit is just by selecting them all together and then hitting Command G. In our case, I'm going to select this one, then the black one and the green, Command G, and now these are all grouped, and I'm going to call it I, just like that. If you see, now it's kind of looking like that one, very similar to that. And you see, it was just nothing more than just a bunch of ellipses on top of each other. Simple like that. Also, now let's proceed and create that aspect of the eye, which is like the eyelid, which I want to animate by making it go up and down, kind of like if this creature is like blinking. Right? So the way that I want to do it is let's use the pen. We haven't used that pen tool for anything other than just giving you that example that we did earlier. But now let me show you how I want to use it. So I want to provide that little curvature over the eye so that it looks like a little bit like sleepy or something like that. And then that's what I want to perform with my pen. So I go to the Create Tools and select the pen. I'm going to start like somewhere around here because what I want to do is I want to create a surface that has that little curvature, but has enough space to cover the eye once I bring it lower. So I'm going to use my pen tool. I'm going to start like somewhere around here. I'm going to say click. Probably maybe not even halfway through the eye. I'm going to say click. Then I'm going to do click one more time here on the edge. Then I'm going to click roughly around the center of the white part, but over the eye, over that pupil. I'm going to select once, but keep the mouse down so I can drag and create that little curvature. Now I'm going to bring my mouse down roughly around the height of where the other one is, which I think has been given to me by this guide. So I'm going to now do one more click, move the mouse again and do click, move the mouse again up to towards the top right corner. And you see, Rive is amazing because it's guiding me through it. I'm going to say click, and then I'll try to close this whole shape by going back to the origin point and doing click. And now I select the whole thing. Now I'm going to just do escape to get out of that edit mode. And now this is going to represent my eyelid. Yeah, you're probably laughing like, no, that's not an eyelid. That's just like a box with a little bit of a curvature on top of it. No, you will learn now the trick that I'm going to be doing. You're going to be learning about masking in Rive. If I bring down this whole element down all the way to where the eye is, you see it's not covering quite. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it back again to where I kept it. I can just select the path right here and do edit vertices. Now I'm going to bring these two vertices up here and I'm going to bring them much higher because I wanted to cover the whole eye. I know that these sides right here, like it has the same width. I can just fix it and bring it over to this point. It doesn't have to be perfect because some of that area is going to be covered anyway. So I'm going to show you how you can make it so that this container right here gets only visible and make it look like an eyelid so that it only looks like it's covering the eye, as the eyelid kind of makes that covering effect of the eye. First of all, let's change the color first. I'm going to do that. So let's change the color of that blue of the eyelid right there. There it is. That's the eyelid. And I'm going to go back to my component, which I think I'm going to immediately conveniently call it eyelid. And there it is. I'm going to paste. I'm still in design mode. Remember, I'm going to do the blue now. I'm going to paste it right there. And there it is. Then probably I can just animate it going like this. And you're like laughing like, oh, Roman, oh, that's not how an eyelid works. It doesn't even look like that. Well, I'm going to show you what is the trick that I'm going to be doing. So this is the eyelid that I'm going to create the effect of. So now I'm going to do this. I'm going to copy the white part of the eye, which is like the base part of the eye. Let's call it like that. Eye base or something. I'm going to make a copy of that. I can just do Command C, Command V, and you see now how I have the eye base 2 element. I'm going to rename it and I'm going to call it eyelid mask. And then now I'm going to move it all the way up here. Or I could have even left it there, but at least I just want to show you how it works. So this is the element that is going to be the eyelid. I want to add a mask. What is a mask? So in design terms, a mask is some sort of a shape or object that is used to hide or reveal parts of other images or objects. In this particular case, that white part represents the mask that is going to show the part of the eyelid that I'm interested about, which is only the round portion of the eye because I wanted to make it look like it's wrapping around it as opposed to being just a box on top of it. So if you see, for example, if I bring it, for example, 25%, you see the eyelid right there, that light blue part, which is on top of the blue portion, is just so that you can see the effect that is going to happen once I apply it as a mask. When I drop this below and then I make it look like an eyelid, so it's going to cover it like that, and it's going to look like the eyelid is fully closed. So I'm going to bring it back to where it was, just like this. Now, the way that you apply masks in Rive is you select the item in question, in this particular case, this shape. I am going to click this item called clip. You select the clip. And now you select which is the item that is going to be my mask. The item that you're selecting, that you click on, Now you select the item that is going to cover that item or is going to reveal it. In this particular case, it's going to reveal it. So only whenever this item is available, that eyelid is going to show through that item. So it's going to be the mask of that eyelid. So if you see now, I'm going to say clip and I'm going to select that eyelid mask item, which is this one right here, or you can select it from the hierarchy. I'm going to say eyelid mask, and there it is. Now what I'm going to do is this eyelid mask, which is already white, I'm just going to remove the color altogether. Now you see that that element, which is just a circle, is actually serving the purpose as being the mask of that blue square, which is on top. Now, if you select the eyelid, you see the outline of the eyelid is still that same component. It's just that it's been masked by that white circle in front of it to make it look like the eyelid. Now, all I'm going to do is, actually, I don't like the way that this anchor point looks like here. Remember, that was the original one when we initially created. You can click here on the arrangement tools, select freeze, and now we'll move the item. We can just move it all the way at the top because we want to just bring it up and down, and then that's it. I can just hit done, and then when you want to create the effect of the eyelid just moving up and down and just like blinking, you're just gonna do this. And it looks as if the eye is blinking. You can add extra effect by actually maybe flattening the eyelid like this so that it does more the effect of it's actually closing as opposed to just staying as a curve. And then you kind of give it the effect that it's actually coming down and covering the eye. So you can do all of that, and we're going to cover that in just a minute. But just right now, you see how we were able to create the eye as an isolated item within its separate artboard. Now what we want to do is create this other part of the eye that looks kind of like a tentacle with an eye coming out of it, right? So we want to do this piece right now. I'm going to leave this right here because we're going to come back to it, right? Remember, we're just talking about nested artboards and how you can leverage all of that with this type of approach. So I'm going to remove the background from my artboard right here and just keep it like that, transparent. Now, how do I create this other item right here, which is kind of like a tentacle, which has like an eye coming out of it? So my idea of this was kind of like a sea creature of some sort. So I'm going to create now this artboard that will represent that long tentacle with the eye coming out of it. So I'm going to select artboard from my arrangement tools. I'm going to do artboard, and I'm going to create, in this case, it's going to be like a free-form artboard. I'm going to do it maybe roughly like about this height. I'm going to call it long eye because it's like a long eye. And if you see here, notice that is pretty much another ellipse with a rectangle with some sort of gradient applied to it. And at the end of the gradient, it's actually the same color as the body. So we're going to do exactly like that. Remember, you know basic shapes in Rive. So that's exactly what we're going to tackle here. So please just continue on that practice using basic shapes to create more complex shapes. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to come up here and select an ellipse. I'm going to do my ellipse, hold shift, do a circle roughly about this wide, and I'm gonna copy the colors from here. I'm gonna do it as a gradient. I could do it as a radial gradient. I can now select, for example, the top of that blue. I'll just do the eyedrop. I'll pick that one right there. I'll copy that and do paste here, right? And I'm gonna do it as a, let's do it as a linear gradient. So I'm gonna click on that color, and instead of solid, I'm gonna make it linear. And if you see as a linear gradient, it gives you these two indicators where you can just change the direction of your gradient. I'm going to use the lighter version at the top and then the darker at the bottom. So I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to select the top color of the gradient. And here is where you change the colors. You can just do the top one, and I'm going to select that one, and I do enter. Now I'm going to select the bottom one, which is this. You select it and you see it gets highlighted. I'm going to pick that blue now. So this is the blue that I want. It looks like a little bit darker. So I'll pick that one, copy it from my design, and then bring it right over. If you already know the colors, you can just pick it right out of this color palette, of course. But in this particular case, I want to honor my design and I want to keep it just like that. Let me bring this gradient that starts a little bit somewhere around here. And there it is. I'll probably leverage those same colors, but I'll continue in the same pattern that I'm doing, like picking the colors from there. So now how do we create this part of the tentacle, kind of like the stem of that part? I'm gonna do the same thing as before. I'm gonna use a rectangle. Select the rectangle. I'm gonna draw it right up here for now. Later, I'm gonna move it behind it, but let's do it probably like around this long. You don't have to be so precise in this particular case. I'm trying to be flexible on that to kind of be courteous to you guys. So I'm going to move it below, and I'm going to do the same approach. I'm going to make it as a linear gradient. I'll move my gradient up here, and then the other one down here. Let's do it again. So I'll grab this one, move it down here. The top color will be that darker version, which is pretty much, I think, is this one. I'll probably maybe want it a little darker, but let's see. If I just pick that one right there, see, it came out a little darker. So I'm going to pick that one. Let's grab it. And I'm just going to paste it right here as the top color of the gradient. And then the bottom part of the gradient will be the actual color of the body. So I'll select that, and then I'll reuse that color in other places as well. So I'm going to select the color, make it the bottom part of my gradient by selecting that bottom color of the gradient, paste the color in there, and there it is. Now I'm going to just position it accordingly. I could probably make some adjustments to the gradient in here, maybe use that same darker color in there, probably like this. You see, I just adjusted that color myself, which is okay. That's no problem. Let's zoom out. Also, let me make sure that all of this is also the same unit. Right now, these are two individual units, as you know. The way that you could do it is you can highlight everything inside of your artboard. You move it as a unit. For example, right now it's in the center, and you do Command G for grouping. So do Command G, and let's call it long I. And there it is. Now it's a single unit. Let's remove the background from this artboard. I don't need that. I want it to be transparent. And then how do I now leverage this I, which is right here, and I want to add it right inside of that group? Just like we did before, we added a nested artboard. With this artboard selected, I'm going to go to my arrangement tool, select nested artboard. There it is. I'm going to click somewhere where I feel is going to land, but it doesn't matter because you can position it later. I'm going to do it, do eyes, select it, and there it is. Now I can shrink it to where I feel it works best for this effect. And there it is. I think it protrudes a little bit outside of the eye, but you see like the eyelid kind of coming inside of the circle. So let's try to do the same thing, and I'll position it accordingly, maybe a little lower. And there it is. I think this kind of works. I'll probably maybe bring it a little bit outside because I think this is just because I created the design like that. Also, I don't want it to be just floating outside of the long eye. I want it to be part of that whole eye thing. Let me do one grouping so I could change the origin. Remember, nested artboards, you cannot change the origin. You just have to wrap it around a group, and then you can change the origin or pivot point. Command G for grouping. There it is. And now I'll move it inside of my long eye. And now you can see how I can change my eye as a single unit, including the tentacle and the imported nested artboard for the eye. If you notice, this is looking a little wacky. I don't think this is how a tentacle with an eye should move. I think it should move from below, and then it moves with the anchor at the bottom, the pivot at the bottom, and then it just moves like that. So instead of having the origin at the center, it will have it all the way at the bottom. So let's change the origin of this group. The way that you do it, you go to the transform tools, you select it, and you click on freeze. So you go to freeze, you drag the origin from either one of the arrows. In my particular case, it makes sense that I just drag it from the top. I drag it all the way down until I feel like a click, or like I feel like it snaps into place. And there it is. So now that I'm satisfied with that, now I hit done. And look, now it behaves exactly the way that I wanted. Awesome. This looks great. This is looking very much exactly like I'm expecting this design to go. So now that I have my tentacle, let's go back to the eye and let's animate the eye so that then we can see it come to life once we add it to the tentacle, and then we're going to animate the tentacle. And then now you see how you can build these complex structures, these complex animations using nested artboards and nested animations. So how do we do that? So I'm going to do a simple animation for the eye. I'm going to do the eye that is moving like side by side, and then the eyelid, I want it to move up and down. So Roman, you haven't done this before. You're doing 2 animations at the same time? Can you actually do that? Yes, you can. And this is the power of adding more than one layer. I'm going to show you that. We hadn't tried this before. Let's do it right now. I'm going to keep this to the side because we're not going to do it. We're not going to use it at the moment. And now we're going to focus on building the animation just for the eye. So let's go to the eye artboard right there. I'm going to flip to animate mode. Actually, let's go back to design to make sure that we have all our things in place. This is kind of like my workflow. I make sure that I already have my eyelid, the one that I'm going to animate. I know how to animate it. Perfect. Do I have the eye as a group? I can move it as an individual item. There it is. Perfect. And my eye base, it is there. It's not going to move, so it's going to remain there. So that's perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and flip now to animate mode. There it is. And now I'm going to change a few things. So we have the eyes artboard, and we have the default state machine connected to the default timeline, which is totally fine. I'm going to remain my state machine. I'm going to call it eyes, just like the artboard. And instead of having just one single animation, remember, we're going to create 2 animations. How can you create 2 animations? You can create them all within the same timeline, but it's better that you split those so that then you can merge them, you can blend them, you can do a lot of cool things. For now, we're going to focus on creating the animation for the eye. So here, I'm just going to say, in the timeline, in the default timeline, I'm just going to say moving eye. The moving eye timeline represents an animation that will represent the eye just moving side to side. By default, remember, animations are in the one-shot type of animation. But in this case, you want it to be like back and forth all the time, infinitely. So I think this either will be a loop or a ping pong. So let's try the ping pong for now. So now I want to animate and I want to key the properties of the eye. The eye right now sits in the center. And you see that the properties around the eye, which is a group, is kind of like you have the position, scale, rotation, and whatnot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to key the positions of just the positions of the X and the Y for now. So you could do it in a couple of ways. So you can start by moving the item yourself, and you see how the X and the Y properties already get keyed automatically, or you can yourself key those properties yourself. So you select the eye and you go click, click. Now you know that in the timeline, what's going to happen here is that the positions of X and the Y are going to be keyed at the beginning of the timeline, and then you can change it across the timeline. But at least you know that it's going to begin at that position. Now, the next thing that I'm going to do is, let's say a little bit further down in the timeline, I am going to move it from position, let's say right here. So you see, it starts here, it goes there. Now, let's say at position 30, I'm going to move it somewhere here. Then at position 45, I'm going to move it somewhere down here. And then at position 1 second, I'm going to move it all the way back up here. And you see, I did kind of like a little bit of a zigzag. So if I move it, you see that the eye looks like that. The animation looks like that. And then let's say I execute the animation after I've keyed all those properties at those given time lapses, at those given positions. I modified those keyed properties, X and Y, in this case for the position. Now, when I hit it, now it looks like that. I think that this one, I need to modify it because I think it went a little bit over. So I'm just going to edit it. So you see, remember, this is how you do it. You use this to then tweak your animation to make sure that it looks well. Now, if I hit it again, I think that looks much better. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all those keyed frames based on the positions of X and Y. And now I'm going to apply a cubic animation to those. I just do that, and then when I press it, now it looks a little bit more appealing, like a little bit smoother. And remember what we did. I just animated this artboard, but this artboard is actually a child of this other artboard. If I select this one and I just hit play, you see how the same animations that I applied before, they get applied here. very easily and very convenient. And this is the power of nested artboards. So this is some of the things that you want to leverage in your own animations. So let me do pause here. Let's go back to the eye. And now you see that I created the animation for the eye. Oh, well, everything fine. Now, how do I animate the eyelid? I could do it right here in this same timeline. That's not a problem. But I'd rather animate it somewhere else, animate it in another timeline. That way I can make it either go a little faster, go a little slower. It doesn't have to line up with this specific timeline. And then I can freely do it in another place where it doesn't disturb the animation of the eye. You're free to do it in this same spot, but the suggested way is actually create another one. That also brings you up to speed in creating additional animations and learning about how to create multiple timelines within your own state machine. So now let's learn how to do that. Right here in the animations panel, I'm gonna click on this little plus. This little plus is what allows you to create additional timelines. So I'm gonna click here, and you could do timeline. You can create other state machines, but in this particular case, we only need one state machine to govern those timelines. So I'm going to select my timeline. I'm going to just drag it down here, and I'm going to call it blinking. I don't think blinking will be like a one-time animation. I think it would probably be more like a loop, or just like go up and down, either be a loop or a ping pong. So I think I'd rather go with a loop. So I'm going to select blinking. I'm going to make it into a loop. And all that you will see here, for example, if you switch back to moving eye, this is only pertaining to the eye. Now, when you do the blinking, it will only be pertaining to the eyelid. So the first thing that I'm going to do, remember, is key the properties that are going to be involved in making this eyelid look like it's moving. In my case, it's only going to be the Y position and perhaps the Y scale. So I'm going to start by doing the basic animation, which is the eyelid is open, blink, blink, and then remains open. Let's try that. So I'm going to key the initial position, which is going to be that the eyelid is open. So I'm going to do click, click, and then I'm good. Right around maybe keyframe 25, I'm going to bring down my position, the position of the Y of the eyelid. And I'm also going to shrink this. And if you see here, the Y scale is also changing. So I'm going to change it right here in place. I could have done it in there, but I didn't know exactly the number that I wanted to go for. So I'll probably use this one instead. So now you see that it is open and then it is closed. Now what I want to do is maybe copy the same keyframe, or I can just redo it again. The most convenient way of reusing keyframes that you've already adjusted for positions and keyed specifically, you can just copy paste it. So the way that you do is you select the key, Command C, go to the specific frame where you would like that key to be, and then you just do Command V, and then you're pasting it. Right there, if you see, it's just going to be blinking infinitely as a loop. If you go back now to your long eye artboard and you hit play, you don't see the blinking. Why you don't see the blinking? Something is wrong. No, there's nothing wrong. It's just that your state machine doesn't know about it. And the way that you make it know about it is that you either add this timeline to it like this, using layers, because you want them to happen in parallel. This is the concept of layers. You can have multiple transitions, multiple animations, even multiple workflows that you want them to happen in parallel. You create multiple layers. In this particular case, we only need one layer because the moving eye, or even in other animations, we only needed one layer. In this case, I'm just going to say moving eye. I'm going to create, instead of another animation that happens in a sequence, no, I want it to be in parallel. So I'll create another layer inside of this state machine. And all I need to do is drag my blinking animation. I will drag a transition. That way, moving eye and this layer, which I'm going to be calling it blinking as well, will happen in parallel. They will both enter the state machine and execute at the same time. So if I hit play now on my eye's state machine, it will blink and the eye will move. Now, if I pause this and come right back over, I am going to hit play. Now you see it blinking. and you see the eye moving. I want to create a better effect for that eyelid. I just wanted to bring home the message of having multiple animations, reusing nested animations, seeing them reflect in real time as we make progress. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to make a better animation for the blinking. So instead of being like this, what I want to do is I want it to remain open for a little longer. I'm going to copy this key, paste it right on my playhead. Then it blinks. Then it's going to open real quick. I'm going to copy this one because I want it to blink once again. Then I want it to open once again. I'm going to copy that same one right there. See, you're leveraging the current work that you've already done. So you want to leverage that hard work and put it to use. So I'm going to copy that one, bring it over here. You can just space them out accordingly. And let's see what it looks like now. So it blink, 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 blink. That looks much better. I can also, for example, change the playback speed in here. For example, make it half the time. And look at this. Now it looks blink, 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 blink. So it's half the time as far as speed, not the time of the timeline, which is okay. Now, if I select my long eye artboard, let's see what it looks like. If I select it, now look what it looks. It looks much better than I anticipated. Now you see the concepts of nested artboards. You see how we brought two animations together by using layers within the same state machine. If I just go back to my eye right here, you see how I have then my eye state machine. The state machine has two timelines. Both of them happen in parallel when I do the moving eye, and then immediately enters the moving eye, and then he just does it as a ping pong. So you see it's a separate type of animation. Then I do the blinking as a loop. You see multiple types of animations and happen in parallel, which is pretty cool. And they're both as layers. That way they happen in parallel and they would blend, making one cohesive, coordinated set of animations to make it look like a realistic eye. So now if I hit play, I think I like this animation for the eye. So I'm going to stick with this for now. And I think this is pretty good. So now let's proceed and move to the right and now complete the animation for the tentacle, right? So if I do this one and I hit play, right now it's just like that. But you see how the eye, which is a nested artboard, is performing animations in there. Now I want to animate the whole tentacle. But now if I animate the tentacle, it will also animate the nested artboard, which in turn has some animations inside and so on and so forth. And you create like really complex animations like this. So let's do this real quick. The long eye artboard, there it is. I'm going to rename my state machine just like the artboard. And this timeline is going to be a very simple one because it's just going to be one animation, the animation of the tentacle left to right, just like swaying back and forth, right? So I'm going to call it tentacle, or just let's just call it long eye, just like that. And then remember, I'm going to key the properties that are going to be involved in the animation. In this particular case, it will most likely be rotation. So I'm going to select my long eye, and I know that I'm going to use this anchor point to just make it look like it's swaying left to right. So I am right here already in the animate mode. I either can just select the rotation right away. I can just key that property. I say rotation. That is what we're going to do. And I'm going to start at this position, probably like on the, like leaning towards the left-hand side. And then all I'm going to do is just maybe move it towards the end. And then I can just sway it right over to this side. And then I can just turn this into a ping pong animation. And check this out. Very simple. I just made it look so simple, and it's just swaying back and forth. Let's actually make it a little bit more complex. Let's just make it so that it does a little bit of a dance in between. So for example, I can make it so that it gets to this point, but then right around here, it just does a little bit like to the left and then goes back to the final position. In this case, I can probably rotate this a little bit less and then just bring this back over. I'm going to select all the keyed properties within the timeline. I'm going to turn this into a cubic curved animation. And now when I hit the ping pong, so it looks like this. And there it is. I think I like it. It's coming out really nice. And you see how now I've been able to do all those multiple animations, very little effort, just using the default components. And now we're going to proceed to create more parts of this character and then bring it to life, bring all those pieces together, make a full-blown character. And then we're going to continue building more complex little structures and nested artboards. Now let's continue building the rest of the character. If you see the design right here, this is what the character looks like. So we're gonna create the part of the body that encompasses or holds the eyes, the mouth, and the cheeks right here. And then it's kind of like the anchor point for the limbs, right? So we're gonna create like 6 limbs and whatnot. We're gonna create this as part of the body. But let's keep creating some additional nested artboards that represent some of the elements of the body, in this particular case, the mouth. So I'm gonna be building the mouth as a separate nested artboard that then I will bring in, and then I'll assemble those pieces together. So why don't we do that? So I'm gonna create an artboard that would represent this thing right here, okay? The mouth. So I will create a new artboard, and probably should be like right below here. And you see I just created it arbitrarily in that size. You can adjust it later. But let's start making some changes. Let's start making some progress, and then we can make adjustments later. I'm just gonna call it mouth, just like that. I'm just gonna call it mouth. And then if you see the design encompasses, for example, this would be, remember, going back to the original basic elemental shapes such as ellipses, circles, rectangles, and whatnot. In this particular case, you could notice that this is an ellipse behind it. And then these are just ovals or also ellipses that are just shrunk to be a little bit narrower and then just represent the teeth. And then if you see they're like cut in half, that means we're gonna employ also the technique of adding a mask so that they can just reveal through the mouth that they look like they're coming out of the mouth like that. Okay, so that's exactly what we're gonna be building. I'm just gonna move this over to the side and then just work on this little area right here. I can just move this over so I can see it a little better. So pretty much that's exactly what we're gonna be dealing with. I'm gonna start by adding, again, I created my default basic artboard, and then inside of the artboard, you go to the create tools and you select an ellipse. So if you see there, the design looks like an ellipse like this with a, a very narrow height, but then a wide width. And then it looks kind of like that. And then if you see, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna pick that color that we're using for the mouth. So let me pick on that color right here and see, I'm gonna grab that same color and I'm gonna make it as part of the background. So make sure that you're in the design mode first, then we're gonna flip over to the animate mode when we decide to make an animation for the teeth and the mouth and all of that. So if you see the mouth, this is the artboard, and I'm going to change the color right here just by pasting the color into the fills and strokes field. It's on 100%, and you see the color right there. Then if you go back to the design, you see that the teeth look just like normal. You would add like ellipses just like this one, but they will be a little narrow and they will look like a tooth or something like that, right? So let's do exactly the same thing. I'm gonna go to my create tools, grab one ellipse, and I'll just draw it just like that. You see? I can even make it white right away, and I'll make sure that it protrudes a little bit beyond the ellipses that shows in the back right there. If you see, actually, I want to make it a little narrower based on the design. So let's do that. I'm just going to make it a little narrower. And if you see the tooth, there's a bigger one. There are 2 big ones, like kind of fangs on the edges, and then smaller ones inside. So I'm going to do that. So I can copy this. When you see this is an ellipse, and I'm going to just do either Alt and drag to just make that one just a copy of it. And then I'm going to shrink it to make it look smaller. And then I'll just keep it right there. I can move it a little bit to the side, make this a little bit wider, just like this, you see, and then we're gonna leave like a gap in between. What are we gonna do with these two? I could do the same thing. I can grab these two, do Alt, and just drag it over, and you see how I copied those. I can just swap the position of these ones. I can just grab this one, just drag it over here. And if you see, there they are. Now they're right there, they're not properly aligned, but what you could do is just adjust it a little bit. And remember, this is supposed to be like a creature. Maybe it doesn't have to be perfect or anything. But if you see, I want to make the teeth look like they're protruding from the mouth, like coming out of the mouth, and I want to achieve that effect by creating a mask over the teeth. So the teeth will be masked by another ellipse that represents kind of like the lower lip of the mouth, and then it extends beyond pretty much all the way up to the height of the artboard, and then it covers the height of the teeth. So what the first thing that you should do, of course, is because you want to treat them as a single unit, you could do like a pan over the teeth just like this, and then you can group them and they will become a single unit. So I'm going to do Command G for grouping, and there they are, and you can just call it literally teeth. This, we can call it lips if you want to call it like that. And then now, how do I make this so that it hides behind this mouth, but then it makes it look like it's actually coming out of it while still keeping that background behind it? So I'm going to show you a very quick trick. So I'm going to grab the lips, which is that ellipse behind. I'm going to do a copy paste, and there it is. That's my lips. And I'm going to call this ellipse teeth mask. I'm going to put this all the way at the top. So now I want to retain at least the bottom part of this ellipsis, and then what I'm going to do is use it as the mask so that it looks like he's actually coming from the lips, and he's even coming from in front of the mouth, but still keeping that bottom part so that it can give you that illusion that it's actually coming out of the mouth. So instead, what I will do is you can select your teeth mask, you can expand the shape and go inside of the path, and I could do edit vertices. So I'm going to edit the vertices of this ellipse. I'm going to click on convert, which actually converts it to individual paths and individual points that I can manipulate individually. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the top part of that ellipse. I'm going to drag it all the way up. You see the bottom part remains the same. I didn't want to manipulate the whole shape. I wanted to manipulate the underlying path so that I can just manipulate the points that I'm concerned about. And I want to make it look like it's part of the mouth, but at least showing the teeth at the same time. So I'm going to drag the sides of this ellipse just like this. Drag it enough so that you see that the teeth are actually being contained in there. And then if I escape out of that, you see that the container or the enclosing container of the teeth is actually still contained within that mask. So then this looks good. So what I will do is I will select the teeth. I will click on clip. Remember, this is the way that you create masks in Rive. You select clip, and then you select the item or the element that will serve as the mask for the item in question. In this case will be this. So I will select that. And of course, remember, you need to make it invisible. You need to remove the color so that they actually show, because they reveal whatever they're masking. So in my teeth mask, I will just remove the background color right here. I just press on the minus. If you see right there, I just press minus, and there they are. The teeth now show from in there. I will remove the background from this artboard. That way it looks transparent. Remember, when we overlay this on top of our monster, on top of the body, we don't want to see any background, but we still want to see that. So let's remove the background. And now I'm going to play around with a couple of animations that I wanted to show you within the mouth. So you see the mouth and you see now the teeth right here. You can just play with the teeth and look. Now they look like they're actually coming out of the mouth. So this is exactly the effect that I wanted to achieve. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my state machine, and I'm going to call it teeth, because it's going to actually contain like, well, actually I should call it mouth because it's not just the teeth. So I'm just going to call it mouth. But one of the timelines is going to enclose an animation that will be just the teeth just showing, maybe like going up and down a little bit, kind of like an idle state. So let's just call it that. I'll call it idle, and I'll make this animation a loop. And now what I'll do is exactly like we did before. We will key the properties that we're interested in animating. In this particular case, we're only going to animate on the y-axis. So I'm going to key the y-axis right at the beginning of the time. Remember, we just want it to last 1 second. So let's just do, you could do a loop. In this case, now that I think of it, I want to do a ping pong because I just wanted to go up and down, up and down. And then the initial position will be that. And then I want it so that when it reaches the 1 second, it is at a little bit, just a little bit higher, very slightly higher, so that is very subtle movement. I am going to highlight my timeline and turn it into a cubic animation. I am going to keep it as a ping pong. And now when I hit it, you see that there's like that little idle effect on that. I'm gonna try now another animation because we're gonna now tie these things and we're gonna try to be able to execute these animations from the parent artboard that invokes this nested artboard. I'm gonna show you that, but I'm gonna set the foundation first. So we already have this animation that is just kind of like idle teeth. Now we're gonna make one that looks like the mouth is opening a little bit and then the teeth is going back inside of the mouth. So let's try that. Remember, you create an additional timeline that encloses your animation by just pressing on the plus button right here. I'll press the plus button and click on timeline. And here I say open mouth, and it will just be open in the mouth, and then that's it. It's not going to be in the loop. It's just going to open once and then stop, while the idle actually maintains that loop or that like back and forth of teeth moving. So the effect would be actually from the lips and also the mask. I want both of them to kind of work in coordination. So in that case, I should actually select both of them and I'm going to group those. But you see, I can have to move it, for example, below so that I can preserve that order and that draw order pretty much. So the teeth are on top. They're still part of the mask that is inside of this group. And I can call still this mouth, right? And now what I'm going to do is make sure that the idle is still preserved. So the idle still works fine. It's just very slight movement. And then if I go to the open mouth, I can select just the mouth, that group that I made, which is the mouth and the mask. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to key the y-axis as well on the mouth first. And then I'm going to make it so that like it opens the mouth, kind of like yawning a little bit. But I'm going to do is I'm going to stretch it on the y-axis so it looks like it's open like that. You see, I want to anchor it at the bottom. You see, there was a problem in there when I was trying to stretch it. So let me remove that and redo it again. This mouth group, what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the freeze because I want to anchor it at the bottom. I want it to stretch upward, but still be anchored at the bottom. This is the reason why you do the freeze and you change the origin. So the origin will be the bottom of the mouth. Now I do done. Make sure that the idle is not messed up at any moment. Okay, so it's not messed up. That's all good. Let's go back to open mouth. So with that selected right there, I am going to do the Y scale because I'm going to scale it on the Y axis and I want to keep that as part of my mouth, part of the keyed properties that are going to be affected. Let me go back to design, move my artboard down. Try to make sure that you do that in design mode. Otherwise, then it's part of your animation, like moving the artboard. So let's go back to animate. I'm going to select my mouth and you see now I'm going to stretch it the same way that I was trying before. So I'll stretch it. So I'm going to do it again. Make sure that here we are there at that initial position. Then I'm going to move to around the 45th frame. And now I'm going to stretch it the way that I was saying. So I'll stretch it. And now you see that the mouth goes like that, but then it kind of like goes open. I can stretch it a little more. It's just that I wanted to keep both the mask and I wanted to keep the mouth kind of like in the same position. And that's why I wanted to keep it like that. But you could come up with ways in which you can truly make this like a hack. But in this particular way, this is the way that it works for me. You just open the mouth and then closes it. I'm going to now do the same thing for the teeth. So I'm going to grab the teeth. I'm going to key the Y position. And there it is. So when it opens the mouth, the teeth kind of go inside a little bit like that and then go back up. So I'm going to copy that key. I'm going to paste it at the end. That way it looks like that. Instead, what I want to do is I want to keep the mouth a little bit open, and then I'm going to make the teeth kind of go up and down a little bit as if it was like yawning or just opening the mouth. So I'm going to move these keys right here of the mouth open. I'm going to move it a little bit backwards. I'm going to copy those two. Both, actually, what I'm more interested is in the mouth, but I need also the teeth at that position. So I'm going to copy the mouth there. I'm going to bring the playhead to another frame wherever I want to persist that same position so it doesn't change. So I'm going to copy that, make sure that I have the playhead selected at the desired position, and then I'm going to drop it there. So you see when I open, it stays open a little bit, then it gets closed. So what I want to do is I want to keep the teeth right there. See the teeth? It goes there, it goes down. Now what I want to do is do an effect, a quick effect that it goes like up and down, like something like that. It's like something funny that I wanted to do, and then go back down, I can use the same one and paste it. So you see it goes like, and then copy this, or actually copy these two, and then do copy paste, and then one more time. I can stretch, you know that you can stretch keyframes and those keys by pressing Alt, and you can at the same time stretch them all, and it kind of does it proportionally. It does a good job on that, but if you don't like, for example, the outcome, then you can do it manually. But a way to do like a lot of the keys together is like highlighting them all at the same time, and you can just drag them all as a unit, or press Alt and you can stretch and space them out like on those keys, so you could do that. So it's kind of like this. Now I want to do an animation on these, so let's try that and let's see what it looks. So it's gonna be open the mouth. I think it's a little bit too much, maybe just a few less frames. And then now let me stretch them again, and now let me see if this is what I want to do. Let's try it one more time. Something like that. That's okay. It's just something subtle, like it opens the mouth and the teeth move. It's just so that you can see how you can make more than one animation. And then later I'm going to show you how to trigger those depending on the state of your state machine. And then you can trigger one or the other. So that's pretty good. So we have the default one, which will be just idle. It will always be like that. And then you have the open mouth, which opens the mouth, and then that's it, closes it again. So now if you see the mouth is all set, I can bring my mouth artboard up here with the rest of the assets so that I can see them a little closer all together. And now I can start assembling the other part of the body, which I mentioned is going to be like the circle that represents the body, maybe the cheeks. Then what I'll do is I'll import some of these nested artboards that represent the eyes, the mouth. And then last but not least, I'll wrap it up by creating the limbs or the arms, the legs, like those 6 limbs in there. And then I think we can have our character fully created and fully assembled once we finish those pieces. So now let's go right in there, and you see already, you notice exactly what I'm going to start building. So I'm going to be creating the body. The body would be just a circle, just an ellipse. So if I zoom in inside of this artboard that I created earlier, there it is. You have your artboard, but then you don't have anything on it. You always go to the create tools right here, create tools, go down to the ellipse, hold shift if you want a perfect circle. So you hold shift and drag, and there it is. That's my circle. I probably want it about that size because I want to give room for the limbs and also a little bit of the shadow under that. So it's gonna look like that pretty much. So now I'm gonna use the default color that I'm using for the body. So I'll copy this, and there it is. I'm gonna grab that same color. I'll just copy it, come over to my design. Remember, you can have your own type of workflow. Here, I'm just showing you where I'm picking the colors from. But if you already have your design, you have your image, you have your mockup, you can even bring it into Rive and then just pick the colors from there. But I just wanted to go step by step. I didn't want to hide anything from you. I wanted to show you exactly how to build these things piece by piece. That way you don't say, Roman, you're going too fast and I didn't understand where that came from. I'll select my ellipse one more time. And remember, when you select one item, the right-hand side lights up, showing you all the properties that you can edit. If you go all the way down to the fills and strokes, you can change the background color, either by pasting it here or opening this up and pasting it down there, whichever way works. I don't think I added any gradients to this. I think I added only gradients to the limbs, which we will get to that in a minute. Let's start creating this effect right here of freckles, something like that, but it would be like a darker blue, and that's exactly the effect that we're trying to get. So I'm gonna create that effect just by creating 3 tiny little circles. So I'm gonna go in there, I'm gonna create 1. Remember, I can press Alt. I can zoom in there and just do Alt, drag, and I'll do it just like that, kind of like as a triangle. If you see the design, it kind of looks like that. I can select the 3 of them and I can rotate it a little bit like this. And you see how now it kind of looks pretty much similar. I'm going to grab that same blue and I'm going to pick it with my eyedrop. I'll select that blue, copy that blue color, come right over. And the cool thing about it is that if all of them have the same color, I can change the color of the 3 of them at the same time by just selecting them all and now pressing paste. And there they are. What I'm going to do, of course, You may have guessed I'm going to group them because I want them to be a single unit. And there they are. They're a single unit. Also, I'm going to just call it cheek. I will use Alt to now copy this whole unit. So I'll select the cheek, Alt, drag. And what I'll do is I'll just rotate it as so that it looks a little bit matching to this one, as if you see right there. I can make adjustments later on. I think they should be a little smaller. If I zoom out like that, I think they may be a little smaller. So you see, I can select both of them and I can shrink them. I can even group them if I want to, just like this. And now you see they're part of the same unit. And then I can just shrink them all at the same time. But then after they're shrunk, I can adjust their positioning. Or for example, in this particular case, you see how this one is rotated, but I don't want that anchor to be rotated. You remember how to change that with the freeze. You could do so, and I could just change that rotation just like that. You see rotation is 0. Now it looks like the original one, but not rotated, and the anchor points are preserved exactly the way that I want it. I love the guides from Rive, so please make sure to always abide by those and be guided by those. If you see, the body consists of those freckles, the mouth, and 2 copies of the same long eyes. So that's exactly what we're going to import now. Let's try it. So you remember how to do that. You go to the arrangement tools, select the nested artboard. And remember, we have a couple of those artboards. I'm going to just click wherever I feel it should go. I'll click and I'll go to long eye. There it is. I will shrink it so that it looks similar to the position of this one. You see, they're kind of like a little bit above the body, probably like a couple of pixels above, somewhere like this. Let's bring another one and then let's actually add it with a gap in between. So let's call here left eye. And you see how, because nested artboards do not support changing the origin, you have to kind of group it. So I will group that on its own, and I'm going to call it left eye. And you see how the anchor is there. I'm going to have to change the anchor just like before. It doesn't inherit the original anchor on the long eye, which was at the bottom. I have to redo it when I import it somewhere else. And I will use the same freeze. And I will use the anchor to just bring it. There you go. And it snaps at the bottom of that artboard. And then I can just hit done. Once this is in place, now I can make a copy. I can just do Alt, drag it over to the side. And now I don't see whether, I can't notice whether they're right in the middle. The way that you could do is you can highlight both of them and now use the guide to see if it lines up in the center. And there they are lined up in the center. If I come back over, I don't see that. Probably that gap may not be that big. So I can just grab one, drag it over to the side, and then do that same practice. Hold them both at the same time and drag them in until I see that guideline in the middle. Now I see that they're both in the middle. That's perfect. Now let's import the mouth. That is the other thing that we need to import. So same practice, same steps. So we're gonna go nested artboard. I select anywhere and I click and I'll do mouth. Mouth was a little bit big, but it's okay. You can shrink it. That is the beauty of the artboards, the nested artboards, that you can just bring it anywhere, and I can just bring it wherever I think it's appropriate. I think there it's the middle. If I see the design is kind of looking very similar, if I bring this over to the side, I think the mouth should be just a tad smaller. I am going to shrink it a little bit because if I see they're kind of like almost halfway through the width of each one of the eyes. So something like this. I think I see like half there. And I think this could work. And remember, just like before, I can regroup the mouth so I can realign and readjust the origin. So I'm going to wrap the mouth, call it again, mouth, and I will use the freeze feature to just anchor it wherever I want. I think there it's fine. So I'm just going to keep it right there. I'll probably adjust the position of those things. You see, like they probably should be higher and further apart. So these are I'll do cheeks and I'll select this one. Actually, both of them, let's bring them higher first. I'll see the design again. So they're probably around that area. That's okay. I'll pick one. I'll move it to one side. I'll pick the other one. I'll move it to the other side. And if you see right there, I think it's coming together. If I now select it and just out of the blue, hit animate and just play this animation, let's see if the teeth actually inherit that idle animation and the eyes move. So let's hit play and there it is. So the eyes are moving, the teeth are slightly moving up and down. Why? Because the default state machine and the default timeline are actually kicking in. But what if you want to trigger a separate one? We're actually going to get into those a little bit later. But now let me show you the beauty of adding nested artboards and accessing their internal state machines and animations so that you can change the speed of the animation, what animation gets executed. You can even make it so that they go a little bit faster, or you want to play them in reverse. You could do all of that. So let's try this. So I'm going to go back to design. By the way, I'll remove the background of this thing so that at least you could see it. Yeah, we will see it transparent later. Now let me make sure that this is in the middle. There it is. Now this is more in the middle. That's perfect. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select one of the eyes. And if you see here, I'm going to go and access the nested artboard. If you select a nested artboard from inside a parent artboard, you will see it like this on the right hand side. This we haven't covered, but we're going to cover it just now. If you see here, when you select one, let me select the artboard again, you get this. You get a drop down that tells you which artboard, pretty much like the same one when you selected the nested artboard, and then you get a drop down of all the artboards available so you can embed it. So here we still have the long eye. Mode is still node. And here you see animations. Animations is an option that allows you to pick the internal animations that you're interested about. And if you see animations, this is actually referring to the state machine inside of that long eye. If I go to long eye, if you see right here, and I go to animate, you see that long eye has only one single animation called long eye. So long eye, let me cancel here. So long eye is one animation that goes as a ping pong, as the ping pong effect right there, you see? But then if I go here, I can see that same animation. If I can remove it, look, I can just remove it. And if I play it, only one will play, but the eye is still playing. Why? Because I didn't do anything. I didn't change anything on that eye. And I don't have it accessible within this nested artboard. I only have access to the one that is wrapping it. And if you see right there, if I click on animations, the only one that I have available, because I selected that artboard, the long eye artboard, is the one pertaining to that artboard. So then the way that you would do it is you select again the animation. For example, you saw how I removed it and now it's not playing it. Now what I'm trying to do is add it again. So you can click on the plus. Here you see the reference to the state machine and the animation that is available. And I'm going to click either simple or remap. So you have two types of ways in which you can bring in or access the animations inside of your nested artboard. So you have simple and remap. So simple animations are an easy way for you to enable an animation playback on a nested artboard. So that's the simplest one that you can do, pretty much just like the name. So I'm gonna select long eye. Let's do it again. I'm gonna click long eye, simple. It's still not playing. Why is that? Because you have to go inside of the properties of that simple animation and you have to select this checkbox right here that it says playing. Now what it does is just starts playing as normal. If it's a ping pong, it goes back and forth. If it's a one shot, it just does it once. And if it's a loop, it just runs in a loop. Here, the cool thing is that you can access and manipulate even the speed of that internal nested artboard, that animation that is in that nested artboard. I can just say right here, run it at twice the speed. I just do 2. I make sure that it's playing, of course. And now I hit play and you see how the first one is playing at twice the speed and I didn't even have to go inside of the other artboard and change it in there. I could just change it right from here. So that is pretty cool. I can then say slow it down instead of going fast. So I could do the same thing. Let's press pause. I go back to the left eye animation and I can just say not 1 but 0.5. So it's kind of like half of the speed instead of twice the speed. So let's try it now. I'll just press play. You see how now the right one is going a little faster, but that is because that's at one speed, while the other one is half of the speed. And then you see that effect right there. I can tweak the values because maybe I don't want it that fast. I'll do that on this left eye. See here, I'll call this one left eye, but this one I should call right eye. Even though they both say left eye, but for example here I say right eye, and make sure that here I also say left eye. Okay, so here they are. Now I have two copies of the same animation, but I can manipulate them independently. So for the left eye, I'm gonna select that one and I'm gonna tweak the animation. Here the default is just getting the first animation and the first state machine. Then you can remove it and you can add it again, and then you can specify what type of either simple or remap. We just done simple for now. Let's do simple as well. So if I could just do this, I'll do 1 point, or actually let's do like 0.75, and then I hit play, and then when I do that, then it does it. That is the simple animation. Now on a nested artboard, you can also apply the remap. So remap animations on a nested artboard allow you to key time values of an animation on the timeline. It also allows you to stretch, it allows you to shrink, or even play an animation in reverse. So let me pause here, and I'm gonna start now building the other pieces, which are just the legs. So by building the legs, I'm gonna pretty much do the same thing as before. This I'm gonna call this body, just so that I keep naming my things appropriately. And I am going in the design, I'm gonna keep this background so that I can see things. So how do I create those legs? So those legs look like rectangles with border radius. Simple as that. So that's exactly what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to my create tools. I'm gonna grab one rectangle and I'm gonna draw it. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit and I'm gonna draw it like this. If I can just zoom out, I can see my rectangle just there. I can change the color. Let's start changing the color. So this one looks like it has a gradient. So it starts at the same color as the body and then it ends in this darker blue, right? So let's do exactly that. I'm gonna grab this color. I'm gonna grab that same color. I'm gonna save time and I'm going to do this. I'm gonna change the color from solid to linear. I will change the direction of my gradient. I'm gonna bring this all the way down, bring this a little lower so that it blends more with the body. I'll select the first color and bring that color right there and do paste. And now I'll copy that bottom one right there. So I will probably do this. I'll pick it with the eyedrop, pick that color. That is it. I will copy it and bring it down here. So I'll select the second one, bring it right there, and I'm done. So going back to the design, I think the first two and the last two pretty much follow the same thing. Then these ones kind of have this little gradient, which is in reverse, kind of like to give you a little bit of depth. So let's try to accomplish the same thing. First, let's bring this a little lower, or actually I can start now doing the corner. I'm going to do a corner radius. Let's start with like 100. And I think that works okay. I'll bring this a little higher so that it blends better with the body. And if you see it doesn't have any strokes or anything, now what I'll do is I can copy this. I'll hold Alt, drag it over to the side. There it is. And I can even copy these two and drag them all the way to the end because they will be the end limbs on this side. I need to bring them higher at the same level as the other two. I will bring then two small ones and I will cut them a little shorter, kind of make them part of like the back or something. It's going to give you that effect. So I will grab two of those. I'll do Alt, drag it over, but then move it a little higher, sort of like this. Here I can adjust maybe the position of this one, so kind of like spacing them out a little. There you go. And then now what I can do is I can group them all like this just by highlighting them. You see they're covering the face. I want them to be part of the back, perhaps. That's much better. And now what I'll do is just Command G for group. I will do group and I will name these legs. Now I will, just as before, you can manipulate the items in your hierarchy and I will bring them lower. This brings them behind the body by just dragging them like this. And you see now you have this sort of effect. You can expand the legs again and you can manipulate them. You can rename them. You can do anything you want. In this particular case, this one, I want maybe you see the color to actually blend in better with the body. So I'll bring it lower. Same thing with this one. I will just change the gradient position, just the position of the gradient, probably right there. These ones are good. And I can just rename these items. I'll start from this one. I'll call it leg 1. Then this one will be leg 2 and so on. And then I can name them accordingly. That way I can refer to them programmatically, or I can even know when I'm animating those, I can do that as well and know which one I'm manipulating. And then I'll do, actually, this should be 4. Then this one will be leg 5. And this one will be leg 6. So leg 6, and there it is. You see, this is looking pretty much close to what this one is. I feel like these ones are a little smaller. Yes, let's actually do that. I'll shrink this one from the bottom. And then the other one will just follow up. And see the lineup right there, like they're both lined up, but they're still anchored to that. If you select the whole thing, you see the legs are still all together. They have the same middle point, which is okay. But I would rather have all of them follow the same anchor point. That way later, when I either shrink them or something, they follow the same direction. So let me change the origin or the pivot point. I'll go to freeze and I will change all of them to be at the bottom like this. I'll hit done. And also I noticed that each individual leg, still their anchor point is all the way in the center. I want to bring all of them at the top. That way I can do that better effect of like moving the leg individually from one anchor point, and they all look like they're stemming from the body. So at least the ones that I'm most interested about are the ones, actually are all of them, because I want to create like slight animations on the ones that are hanging and the ones in the back, and this one kind of like bouncing a little bit. So I'll start with this one, with the leg 1, and I'm going to change the anchor point or this origin. So let's change the origin by going to the transform tools. You select and you click freeze. I go to freeze and I just drag it all the way up here and hit done. And now when I rotate, you see where this is going to come from. So this is going to be the anchor point of that leg. Same thing for this one. I will select the freeze option, or I could do Y, like that command that you saw there, and I can just drag it all the way up. I hit done, and now you see that my anchor is right where I want it, and it looks more like providing mobility to that limb. Same thing with the other ones. Let's just do it real quick. I'll just go over, do freeze, drag it all the way up, right where I see that edge of the component. Same thing with this. Change the anchor point, select freeze, drag it up, and there it is. I hit done. We're almost there. Let's do it for these two ones as well. This one could even be like a little smaller, so I can shrink this one like up to here, and this one also down to the other one, and then just kind of bring them at the same level. And while I'm there, I will change the freeze of this one, bring it up here. That's good. Do it to this one as well. Change the freeze, drag it up. And now I have this one in there. Actually, this one should be a little smaller as well, just so that it matches the top one. So let me just bring it a little lower, and I think there they are. So they're pretty much almost at the same height and position, and their anchor points also match. And if you see, if I select one of these, one of the legs in between, and if I rotate it, you see how they come about. I will flip the gradient because I want to provide that effect. So all you need to do to flip the gradient is just change these points, change one by the other, and then you can even change a little bit and drag the points like that. It's just to provide a little bit of an effect so that it looks like they look like behind the body. So it's just a design effect that you can, it's just a trick. You could just drag this one over, drag this on this side, and I'll bring the gradient point all the way down here. Let's just bring this right back down. I have this one here, this one there, and I'll just do the same thing. So you see, you could just play around with these things. You get a kick out of creating animations, creating the design, creating all your assets, the ones that are going to be part of your design. But you get to learn all of these tricks, and once you do them over and over, you get to learn a lot more, and then you get more familiar not only with the tooling, but you can even create really cool things with just a lot of basic shapes put together in one single artboard like this. And then if you see, I think we're pretty much there. It looks just like the original design. If you see, I have my legs all grouped in one single one, but they're all part of the same thing. It's just because later I want to like shrink them and stuff. Each individual leg, if you see, they have their own anchor, which is perfect. And last but not least, the only last thing that I'm going to add is just like a shadow under the legs. So let me try to do that. So I have my legs, and remember, it's just basic shapes. It's just basic shapes. You go to the create tools, add one more ellipse, and I'm going to add a little ellipse. And I'm going to make it right now over the body, but now I can just drag it right behind the legs. And you see, it looks like that. I think the color is actually this dark blue, but with an opacity applied to it. So I will do probably like 25 opacity, and I think this looks pretty much like I'm expecting. Let me select the full body again. I make sure that I don't have any backgrounds applied in there, and you see it looks pretty much like the one that we just have right there. It's amazing the progress that we've made. I like how far we've taken it, and now we can proceed and we can create animations for this character right here where he moves the legs, and we can do like the animations that are going to be triggered later by our Flutter code, for example, jumping or waving and stuff like that. So let's continue by making the animations that will make this character come to life. So I think we have two animations. One is for waving and the other one is for jumping. Then we'll later create these elements that will be part of the accessories that you can add to this character, like hats, but these will be created as separate elements. For now, we're going to start creating the animation. For example, let's start with the one for waving. How do you do that? So now that I have my component right there, you have my character. The character slightly at least provides some level of movement. But now you want to have one, for example, where your character is just idle. So let's try to add that single animation for the idle state. So you have your state machine, and remember, you always start from there. The state machine is the one that kind of brings everything together, kind of orchestrates all the animations that come together to bring your characters, your scenes, your animations to life. So the first thing that we will do is I will name my state machine. I usually name it after the artboard, so I'll call it just full body. And what I will do is I will create one animation per behavior. In this case, I will do one for idle, one for jumping, and one for wave. So just like that, I'll create an idle, and the idle will consist of just this character just staying exactly where it is, but I'm just going to add a few other things. What I want to do instead is actually make it so that it loops, still shows the eyes moving, it still shows the teeth moving a little bit up and down. And now what I'm going to do is just move a little bit on the legs and then just do that. Simple as that. So let's start with that. So I'm going to pause. It's going to be just a loop. It's going to be just like idling. So the way that you're going to do it is I'm going to select, in this particular case, just the legs. So I'm going to start with the legs, not the legs as a whole, but the legs individually. So I'm going to start by keying the positions of the legs. In this particular case, I'm going to start from the anchor, and I'm just going to do slight rotations to each one of the legs. So let's start with the leg, like this leg right here. And then you're going to start keying those properties that are going to be involved in the animation. In this case, the rotation. So I'm going to do the rotation of leg 6, starts at that position, then probably at key 20, at position 20, just slightly rotate it, then at position 40, at the 40th frame, just bring it back to this side. And then at the end, I'm just going to copy this key and just drop it over, and then you see like slightly you have this animation. I'm gonna do now for leg 1 a little bit similar, but starting the other way, and probably a smaller animation, probably maybe a little bit overlapping this one. I wanted to start at the same position, so I'm gonna keep the rotation the same, and probably maybe around here I will do the other direction. Then in between these two, I'll do the other direction, but slightly. Then I'll come back over and do it maybe closer to here. You see, you want to make it like a little bit random, nothing specific, and you want it to keep it like really, like if you want to do, or in this particular case, you could do it as a loop, but I could do it as a ping pong. That way it just goes back and forth like this. If you see, now it's coming together a little bit and is slightly showing you a state of idle, like an idle state for your character while no one is doing anything with it. If it's not jumping, if it's not waving, if it's not wearing any hat or something like that, it will show like that. Let's do it for the ones in the middle. And that is exactly what I'm going to do now. I'm not going to touch these two because it's kind of like the character is standing. And then now I'm going to do 4, leg 4, which I'm going to start probably at a, like at the same position probably. And then I'm going to do slightly, if I just move this somewhere in here, you see I want to do them like staggered a little bit, and because these are smaller, this could move a little quicker. So I could do this and do this one right here slightly, not too much, and just staggered in some way. They don't have to follow any particular pattern. You see, they could just be like that, swaying in the air, nothing crazy. And then if I just play it, you see how it just goes. So it kind of looks like it's idle. It's just like standing and just moving, breathing normally. If I select now leg 3, I'll do pretty much the same treatment. I will key the rotation just like so, and I will do the same, but in this case, this one will start at a different position and be a little bit different than the other in a different direction. Probably you see, like it's very random, very staggered, and it doesn't have to follow any particular patterns because you want it to be more natural and you want it to look very not planned or very scripted or very like so in sync. And then all you can do is, for example, if I just highlight them all and I just do cubic on the animation, and now the animation will be like a little bit smoother. And if I zoom out, you see how now that looks like, okay, so it's just like that. It's just idle. Like the character is just idle. It's just waiting for something to happen, and then it will start playing. This ping pong animation could work well. You could actually make it into a loop. You could do so because it may look like it's just going like backwards, but that it's okay. It's just that I wanted to show you how you can key those elements, how you can animate some elements of your existing artboard while bringing some of the nested artboards, and you see all those animations coming together and coming into play to make that cohesive animation. So let's say this is the idle animation, and there it is. You see, for example, like a little bit of the idle state of that character. Now, to wrap this one up, I want to make it so that it feels like it's breathing, like the characters just going like that. You could either make an effect that the circle is just stretching in and out, or you can make it go up and down. Let's make one simple. In this case, if you see, let's go back to the design, and you see how the mouth is here, the left eye is here, the right eye is here, the cheeks are here, and then the body's here. But all of them are in separate elements. You kind of want to have all of those elements within the same unit. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight them all just by using Shift, and I'll do Command G for grouping. And if you bring it back to animate, make sure that everything still works well. Now with that group already created, which I'm going to call body, so I'm going to just call it body, I am going to key the position of the body just like so. I'm only going to do the y-axis. I'm just going to do up and down. And because this is a ping pong animation, I'm just going to go all the way to the end and then just do like bring it lower. I can use even the arrow keys to just bring it lower, and I will animate this using a cubic animation. And now look what it does. So it just go up and down, kind of like breathing. I don't want to see a little bit of the arms coming out here. So what I'll do is I will instead not bring it that low and just bring it a little higher, kind of there. And let me see, I think that's enough. And now if I play it back and forth, now you see your character, the whole body is one single unit and the whole thing goes up and down, while internally the eyes are moving, the eyes are blinking, the long eyes are swaying, the mouth, the teeth in the mouth are going up and down, but the body is going up and down at a different speed, while the legs below are just moving, not even paying attention at the one on top, but you are the one who knows how to orchestrate this. So in this case, I love the fact that we were able to create this idle state. And now I think this is enough and this is pretty good. Why don't we go now and create the waving animation? So now that we have the idle, we know that we can keep it running while the character is just standing. And then now we're going to create the animation for the waving. So now that we're done with the idle state, now let's create another one for handling the wave. And then what we will do is we'll create it as a separate animation. Each one of these will be triggered by an input. Later on, when we deal with inputs and listeners, we're going to get to that aspect. But for now, if you see, the full body state machine currently has an entry going to the idle state. Now what we're going to create is another animation, and then we will make sure that from the idle, then we can trigger either the wave or the jump. So now let's do the wave real quick because it's pretty simple. So let's try that. For now, let's just keep it simple and just add another timeline in here, which will represent the animation for the wave. So I will click here on the plus sign and I'll do timeline. I will call it wave. And then the wave is not going to be like something looping. It's just going to go one time thing and then it's going to come back. So we're going to keep it as a one shot animation. So the way that we will do it is we will start by keying the body. So right here, I'll select the body and I will key a couple of properties. I'll key the rotation and probably the y-axis. So the way that I'm going to do is going to go to the side a little bit, like rotate, then lift the arm and then just wave it. That's exactly how the animation will be. If I want, I can start then with one of the legs, which is kind of like much easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use leg 6 to then do this and then do a little bit of waving and then come right back down. So of course, I'm going to set my leg 6 and I'm going to key the rotation of that leg starting at position at time 0. And then what I'm going to do is a little bit further into the animation, then is where I'm going to perform the full rotation. I'm going to keep my arm raised for a little bit, and then I'm going to just at another position somewhere here, just lower it a little bit to do the effect of the wave, come back over. I can even copy the same frame, the same key in that frame. That way it does this. I'll copy one more so that it does that full effect of the wave. So it does bye-bye and then probably come right back down. So I'm going to copy the origin key, this key that was the origin, and then I'm going to bring it right down. And then let's see, I can do a cubic curve and hit play. Let's see. So it's simple. It's just going to do this and then that's it. But now what I want to do is open the mouth and rotate the head. How am I going to open the mouth from here? There is an animation called mouth open, I believe, in the mouth. How am I going to trigger this one? Remember, open mouth, this one, the one that opens the mouth. How I'm going to trigger that one from the other one? Let's try that. So I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to select full body again. Remember, I'm still animating the body. So I'm going to animate the body. At that point is the initial rotation and the y-axis. When it raises the arm fully, I want it to be a little bit lower. And also I will rotate the body just like so. I think I will definitely want to also key in some other elements. For example, the x-axis. So I'm going to do x. Let's do it again. So right from here, I'm going to key x, y in terms of the position. So let's do it again. And the rotation as well. So I'm going to bring it right over, bring it to the side, rotate, bring it a little bit over. Let me just move it there a little bit, just like that. And then I'm going to bring everything right back home where it was just by copying the origin key and just bring it right over. So it's going to do wave down. Maybe this one, I should copy it throughout the duration of the wave. And then I'm going to come right back down. So you see now it just goes, rotates, waves, and comes back. But I'm missing something. I said that I wanted to do like open the mouth a little bit. Right now, I'm just doing the same idle mouth, the teeth going up and down a little bit. I want to trigger the one for the open mouth. How do you do that? Remember the remap? That is what we're going to do now. So how do you trigger a remap, or how do you trigger a separate animation other than this one whenever you have something like a mouth, something like another effect that you're going to switch between two? There's a feature called solos in Rive. So a solos is very similar to a group, but only one of the elements within that solo, within that group, is rendered at any given time. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have actually two mouths. One that is going to show the idle when it's in the idle animation, but then one that is open and closing when it's in the wave animation. That way you don't have to hide one and show the other. By using a solo, you actually can toggle between each one of them without having to create complex interactions of showing and hiding things and persisting the visibility or the invisibility of that item at any given time or in any given timeline. By using a solos, it is much faster than having to animate the opacity of each object individually. So let me show you how the solos work. So let me go back to the design, and right there it is. You have your mouth. For example, go to the body, and there is my mouth. So you have one single mouth. So this one, I'm going to call it idle mouth, for example, right? Now I'm going to copy that same one. I'm just going to do Command C, Command V, and I have my idle mouth. And here I'm just going to say open mouth. I have the same animation on both nested artboards. Both of them are pointing to the same animation. What I'm going to do is the idle mouth, if you go inside of the mouth, I'm going to make it point to the idle one. So I'm going to click animations, idle, simple. This one is just going to be the simple animation. I just want the idle mouth to just be the regular idle. While I will select the open mouth and come right down inside of its own nested, the copy of the nested artboard. Instead of this, I'm going to remove this one, add the open mouth, but instead of being the simple, well, I could actually keep the simple as well because I just want it to open, but remap, we can do it later, or I can even show you how can you tap into the remap because you want to execute either the full length of the animation, you want to do maybe a portion of it, you want to do it in reverse, you could do all of that if you want. For now, let's keep it simple again, but I'm going to do simple, make sure that it's animating, and now I'm going to grab these two mouths, but one of them must be visible at any given time. How do you do that? So you wrap them inside a solo. Again, a solo is kind of like a group, but only one of the elements inside of the solo is rendered at any given time. So you select the two, right click and say wrap in solo. By you selecting solo, now you have this solo and it actually generates like a radio button. And then either one or the other will be visible depending on which one you select or which one you specify in your timeline, because solos can be keyed as well. So you can key the visibility of one or the other depending on which timeline you are. So let me rename my solo just mouth. And you see that it just says open mouth. Here it says idle mouth. So if I go back to animate and then I select idle again, I'm only going to key the idle mouth right here. How do you represent that you only want to see the idle mouth as part of the mouth solo? How do you do it? In your timeline, at the first frame that you can key, you select mouth. And look, when you select a solo in the right-hand side panel, you get this solo little component that says active, and then you can see which one could be active at any given time. Within my solo, I have two items, idle mouth and open mouth. So I'm going to do idle mouth, mouth, idle mouth, and I can key the idle mouth. That means in my solo, the mouth solo will be showing idle mouth until I specify differently. Right now, this means just show the idle mouth throughout this whole animation and don't worry about it. If I just do this, you will see the idle mouth. Now, if I select the wave timeline and I go all the way to the beginning, and instead of keying the idle mouth, which is shown right here, I'm going to select my open mouth right here just by clicking it, click, and you see it already gets keyed automatically. Is saying that the open mouth is the one that is going to play throughout this timeline. So if I hit play, now you see that when I waved, the open mouth animation was executed. In this particular case, if you want to do a change, for example, you want to switch between the two within your timeline, you can do this. At position 0, I want it to be open mouth, just like that. You see, I can do in my wave animation, I want my open mouth to be the one available, right? Let's select it again. So I'm going to go back to wave. And then let's say in mouth here. So let me remove it because it got keyed at the end. So let's go back to the beginning. If you go to mouth, open mouth is selected. Halfway through the animation, I can say switch to the other one. You could just do that. Like at the beginning, it does it. And halfway through it, you can flip from open to idle. And you see how now the solo got keyed to the idle mouth. You get the open mouth for a little bit and then the idle mouth will switch. So if you play it, it opens and then immediately switches to the idle. Of course, that's not what you want, but you can do it like this. I'm just going to remove it. And if you see now, if I play it, it will just play the open mouth animation will play fully all the way to the end. And that's it. So you see, I didn't put, for example, in case if you wanted to change the open mouth to a simple animation to a remap, this is how you would have done it. So I'm going to remove the mouth key right here. I'm going to go back to design and select that the open mouth, instead of being, for example, the open mouth, instead of being simple, it would be remap. So I'm going to remove the animation, go open mouth and do remap. I'm not going to do anything yet. I'm just going to keep it just like that. But let me show you how you do it in the timeline. So in the animate, in the wave, I'm going to go back again and say I want the open mouth to be the element within the solo that will be active at this time. So if you select that, you see that open mouth is actually selected. But now how do you employ the remap and how you say, oh, I want the animation to play either halfway through, you play in reverse, play all the way through. How do you do it? You have to select under that solo, because you know that that solo item is actually available and is going to be rendered. The mouth animation for the open mouth will be rendered. So now you have to manipulate that one. So I'm going to select that one right here. You see open mouth. I'm going to click on my remap animation and you select that you want to start at this position at time 0. And then you select all the way at the end. And then you change this. You also key these properties, meaning I want it to be 100% mixed, meaning I want it to show fully. And the time you change it to 100%, meaning I want it to go the full length of the animation as well. So now if you can even scroll through the timeline, and because of the remap, you can see every single frame being rendered. This is what's cool about the remap. You can actually see through the timeline, within your timeline, you can see the elements of your nested animation mapped into this timeline, and then it kind of matches with your timeline. You can make this, you can say, I want the animation to actually run fully, but at half of the time of my current timeline. You can just drag the key of the 100% value of your animation and you could put it halfway through your timeline. And what it's going to do is actually going to execute it quicker because it's going to end halfway through. So if you play it now, see, it just played half through. You could also play it in reverse. So you can start here. Instead of at 0, you start at 100%. Then you come back over to this one. And instead of being 100, you play it at 0. So that means start at 100% and end at 0. That means play it in reverse. You will hardly notice the difference, but I will play it in reverse. And there it was. It played in reverse, but it also played halfway through. All the way, probably like 30, you see like up to the 30th something frame. I can just drag this right over. So it will play in reverse, but it will fill the timeline and it will occupy the whole timeline. So now I'm going to play it again. And you can hardly notice it because I think it was a one-shot animation, and I think it was pretty much aligned to a 1 second timeline. So I think this looks pretty much the same as if you did it as a simple animation. But I just wanted to show you the power of remap versus simple. You could do remap versus simple if you want to manipulate the animations of your nested artboards. In this case, I think we already have the wave animation in place. We have the idle animation in place. And now we can do the jump one. We can jump into the jump animation. That way we complete that trifecta, having the idle, having the wave, and then the jump. And then that way we could just do like the whole animation sequence for this character. Then we move on to the accessories like the hats and whatnot. And now that we have the wave and the idle, we're going to work now on the jumping animation. So remember, we want to trigger jumping or waving, and idle is like when it's not doing anything. So pretty much we're going to have all those three covered. Let's just move the state machine up here. I usually like to have the state machine above. So I'm going to create one additional timeline. The jump should just be a one-shot animation. It's not going to be looping or anything. It's just going to be a one-time thing. It jumps, comes back down, and then it will eventually come back to the idle. So we're going to do that programmatically later on, but first let's establish the animation that does that. So I'm going to create one timeline, and I'm going to call it jump. And I think I want to prepare the assets for that. For example, for the jump, I want the character to slouch a little bit first, kind of like crouch a little bit, then jump, open the legs a little bit, and then even the eyes, maybe spread them apart a little, and then come back down, all of that together, and then compose itself, right? Something like that. So let's try that. So I'm going to go back to design mode, and I'm going to do some arrangements. For example, I want the eyes to be its own thing, like their own group. So the first thing I do is remember Command G for grouping, and I'm just going to call it eyes because I want to move those, both of them as a unit. And I just want to make sure that everything is well with that. If I just hit animate on the wave, for example, just wanted to make sure that everything is all good. So the jump, we're going to use the body is going to shrink a little bit, then spread the legs as it is in the air, then come back down, compose itself. Eyes will move a little bit on the side. You can think of anything that could simulate and make the effect of doing the jump. So it's up to you here. I'm just going to do some animation, just moving some of those items so that you can see how you can mix it up and your users would see a different animation for when it's waving, idling, or jumping. So in this case, we're going to do the simulation of being jumping. Okay, so let's try that. So I'm going to start with some of these elements being keyed and then using just keying some of the positions like X and Y and even some of the scaling. So we're going to try that. So I'm actually going to be keying the whole body to start with. So what we want to do is the body will be, for example, its position and scaling will be at that level. Like it would be just where they are right now. And then probably 20 frames into the animation or maybe less, something like that. I will make it so that shrinks a little. It's kind of like crouching a little. At the beginning, I also want the eyes to be also part of the movement. I'm going to key the rotation. So I'm going to do rotation on the eye, starting like that, rotation on the right eye as well. And then once we slouch a little, what I want is I want the eyes to come together slightly. So I'm going to rotate this one right here at this position. Same thing with the left eye. So they go like this. It's kind of like going like that. You see, I go up. This is the original position. I'm about to jump. And then probably I could do the same thing with the legs. So I'll do that mainly with the outer legs. I'm going to be keying the rotation of these legs as well. And also the one on the first one like this. And then now when it reaches this point, I want it to go like this. It's kind of like it's trying to propel itself to do the jump, right? So do something like that. Like it's going, okay. And then try that. I want to do the same thing with just the body portion of it. So I will key the Y position of the body. And then once it's slouching a little bit to do the jump to kind of, and then just move the body a little bit. Actually move it, not shrink it. So I will bring it back down a little like this. And then if you see, now it's doing like that effect. So what I want to do somewhere like around this position, then I want the eyes to come apart a little bit, so we can start with the eyes, but also I want the whole body to also move. So maybe let's start with the body instead. So I'll move the part of the body up like this, and you see now it goes down, then goes up. Now the legs also need to move, so I'm gonna move all the legs at once, like all of them as a single unit. I need to make sure that then I need to key the legs also at this point. Otherwise, then it's going to do like that transition from nothing immediately to that. So you want it to start also at one given position along with the other elements. So I'm going to do the Y. I'm going to key the Y on the legs. And then now I will bring it up along with the body somewhere around here. Now I'm going to go back to the legs because I want to now do the spreading of the legs, right? I only did 2 legs, but we can do that. We can start with this. I'll do then spread them apart a little bit. I'll also do the same thing with this one. I will spread it like this, and you see now maybe a little less. And then now when I bring it down, you see now it's going to try to do the jump like that. I'll probably include these legs as well. So I'm going to do this one. I'm going to key the rotation. And also I'll do it with this one. I will key the rotation as well. Once we're here, I will do this one. That one will still stay the same, so that's okay. I could probably just keep also the same rotation for that one. That way everything stays consistent. And now when we're here, now I spread them apart just a little bit, maybe a little bit less than the others, but it's okay. And then I do that, and you see now how it looks like. Okay, so it's gonna do the jump. Remember the eyes, we wanna do the eyes as well. So let's do the left eye. So I want them to come apart as it like jumps and is like in the air. So if we do this like that, and you see now how it goes, okay? So it's like doing the jump. And then all we need to do, if you wanna now reverse this animation, instead of being a ping pong, but you want it to reverse as a one shot, all you need to do is just copy all of these keys right here, then paste it on this side, and then you're kind of reversing the whole animation. But I still wanna do one more. I want to add the mouth into that mix. So I'm going to use the mouth solo and say that instead of being the idle mouth, I want it to be for this animation, for the jump, I want it to be the open mouth. So the open mouth will be, and then it opens. So open mouth, I believe I need to also do, remember, I need to bring this into the mix, say that, okay, at 0%, it will still be closed, remember. When it's still about to jump, it will still be at 0%, meaning just remain still at frame number 1 of the animation or at the beginning of the animation. See, this is the beauty of doing remap in this particular case. But now when it's in the air, I want it to reach 100%. So it goes like open, and then actually even let's do 50%. That way it stays open while it's jumping. Perfect. And then when it comes down is when it actually closes. So you see, that's the beauty of doing remaps and how you can truly manipulate with more precision your animations as opposed to just a simple animation on nested artboards. So now, so it jumps, opens, and then it's gonna come down, close the mouth, because I'm gonna copy all these keyframes right there. I'm just gonna bring them over maybe somewhere around here. And then if I paste, you see how it just goes back down. The mouth will be at 0%, meaning just in reverse, then just play in reverse pretty much. And then last but not least, I'm just gonna grab all of these keys and just bring them over here. And now it completes the full animation. I don't wanna do like 1 second animation. I probably wanna do like 2 seconds, maybe a little longer. Or you can remember, you can just come over here and say, okay, make it 0.5 of its time and just keep the timeline the way it is if you want to. So if I do now play it, it just does that. You see, it goes like that and then it jumps. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to make it a little smoother, or actually that jump I think was pretty good. Let's just keep it at 1. I think quicker looked a little better. So now if we play it, it just goes like that. It's just a slight jump. It's nothing fancy. If you want to do something more, then you could do it. But instead, what we're going to do is we're going to be able to trigger this jump using a trigger. And later on, we're going to be talking about inputs and listeners and whatnot. So you're going to learn how to trigger this animation. Right now, I have to trigger it by hitting play, as you see right there. You see, just like that. And then actually, now that I see the animation, I want to affect. Also, I want to apply some effects on the middle legs as well. So I'm going to just wrap it up with those legs as well. So I'm going to try this. Let's go back to the beginning. Remember, I'm going to do on the leg a rotation. Just keep them the way they are, just like that. Once they are at this position, then they rotate a tiny little bit just so that we can simulate like a movement, like a more natural movement. Once they're here, then we do the whole rotation effect like this. And then when they come back down together, I just bring them a little closer. I could have done the same one, but remember what I said, I don't want it to be like so coordinated and so synchronized. I actually want it to look a little more natural and doesn't need to look like that perfect, which is okay. But in this particular case, because it's coming back down, I would probably want to copy these two original frames because I want them to come down at that exact position. So that is good. Now let's try it again. Of course, I will apply the cubic curve of the animation, and then I'm gonna play it one more time, and I think that's pretty decent. So now I'm gonna move the jump right down here. I have the jump, I have the wave, and I have the idle, which just remains like that. So if you see, it's looking pretty good. And I already have the jump, I already have the wave, and I have the idle. And in just a minute, I'm gonna show you now how to bring some of those other elements. In other videos in the future, we're gonna be showing you how to trigger these animations programmatically from Flutter. But right now, let's still focus on finalizing this whole character, all the animations, all the elements that come together into bringing it to life. The next thing that we're gonna focus on, just by going through the design, we already have the buttons. We're gonna do these accessories like the hats. We're gonna try to do those also as separate artboards that we're going to bring in together. And after that, I'm going to show you how to show them or hide them using solos, applying inputs and listeners. And then we're going to finalize by wrapping up with the buttons, creating the text animation up here, and last but not least, creating that icon that will trigger the renaming of the animation, because this is what will trigger this little creature to come out like from a hole and then do that animation like this, peeking through the form that allows you to change the name. And we're going to create all of those buttons as well. So we're going to continue now with creating the rest of these animations so that we have them all prepared. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to trigger those programmatically. For now, we're going to do all the hooks and all the connections in Rive. And then later on, we're going to move on to Flutter to actually trigger those programmatically. So we'll continue now building out the hat selections, like the accessories that we want to add to our character. And for that, we're going to create a couple of new artboards that will represent that. Later on, we will integrate those into this character via inputs and triggers that will allow us to show the corresponding one that the users pick. And that we will do that through inputs and triggers. So for now, let's build them out first, and then we will integrate them afterwards. So let's start by creating these assets right here. So if you see, we're going to be creating this baseball cap that then the character will use if the user picks it. So we're going to be designing that. Let's create a couple of artboards down here. We're going to go back to design mode and we can create one new artboard. Let's go to our arrangement tools and select artboard. I will create, and I will hold shift to create a perfect square. And I can use something like that, probably. Let's go with like 500 by 500, something like this. And then I'm going to start building out that shape. If you see, it looks like half of an ellipse. There's like a line and then a little bit of a curve. We could do that with a pen. A little circle on top. That's probably like that little button that is part of the cap up there. We also have the front of the cap and even a letter representing Mr. Bubbles, like the letter B, and then it's like masked out, making it look like it's covering the front and it's just being occluded by the side of the cap or something like that. So let's try it just like this. I'm going to zoom in and I'm going to move this a little bit to the side so that we can complete it in parallel. So that we can complete it and look at it side by side. So the way that you would approach this is I'm going to grab the color. I'll pick that purple, initial purple, right? So I'm going to pick that darker purple and we'll use that as the, not only for the line underneath it, which represents like the visor, but also the main body of the cap. So the cap will look like this. I'm going to come over to Rive. And remember, we will be using basic shapes as always. So I will start off by creating, I will go to the create tools and I will use an ellipse. So I can create the first ellipse that represents the cap. I think it's probably a little bit of a oval, and I will add the color right away. if you see. So we started very well just by creating that base foundation for the cap. We want half of that circle. So remember, the approach is you mask it out. So I will go back to the create tools, create a rectangle that covers half of the circle, somewhere like this. And then if you see, it covers half of the circle, sort of like that, or maybe a little bit more. So I will lower it just somewhere here. Perfect. And now I'll select this and I say clip, and then I select the element that will be the masking element of this ellipse, which is that top square. So I select that. Now I'll select that square and remove the color, because remember, the mask element needs to be transparent so that you don't see the background, but it also represents the masking component that then reveals what is actually clipping, which is the ellipse. So now if you remove it, now you see where now the ellipse is actually getting revealed and is on the surface of that masking element, which is a square. Then the next thing that we want to do is that front part of the cap, which is a lighter purple. So look at this trick. This rectangle is the mask of the cap. So I'll call this base cap, and this one base cap mask. But now what you could use is you can use this as the mask of yet another component, which is pretty cool. And then you get into this loop of masks. Like one is a mask of the other while the other one is a mask of the other. So it's pretty cool. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that lighter purple color. Let's pick it right from here. So if you see, I'm going to pick this purple, that light purple in there. So I'll pick it right from my design. I'll grab that. And if you see, it's pretty much like half of the cap. Not quite, but that's what we will try to do. So I will go, of course, and create a rectangle that roughly takes this region right here. I will, as you see, change the color in the fills and strokes. I'm still in design mode, remember? And there it is. And now how do I make it so that this component is only revealed by this component, which will serve as the mask of this one? So now I'll select this, I'll say clip, and I'll select the base cap. And if you see now, the base cap is actually the mask of the rectangle. All I need to do is just shrink it a little bit. And now you see how it is actually the rest of the stuff is being occluded, but only what I'm revealing is the same shape of the base cap, which is what I'm interested about. Same thing I'm gonna do with the text. So I'm gonna grab one text component. I'm gonna just place it right there and just type the letter B. And then I can bring the B wherever I wanna show it. I kinda wanna show part of the letter, something like this. And what I'm gonna do is do the same thing. I make the base cap the mask of that letter. So I'll select the letter right there and I'll say, I can go right back down here. I skip all of that. I'm just gonna keep it the way they are. And I'm gonna select clip and base cap as the mask. And there it is. It's just looking exactly like the one in the design. Now I need to zoom in a little bit because I wanna create that top button up here, which is a darker purple. So let me select that purple right there. There it is. I'm gonna grab that color. And all that is just a tiny little ellipse, which I'm gonna create by going to the create tools, select an ellipse, and do a tiny ellipse up here, change the color, and I will bring it lower in the hierarchy so that it shows below the base cap right there. And then if you see, if I change the artboards color in design mode, that way you see it. So there it is. And last but not least, let's create this shape that looks sort of like a line, and then it takes a little bit of a curve, and it's kind of like a funny visor for the cap. So for that, I will use the pen tool in the create tool. So I'll select the pen, and then I'm going to make this shape. So I'm going to start at this point. I start somewhere here. I click once. I move my pen. I don't even have to press the mouse. I just have to drag the mouse. I don't have to press anything yet. And then once I'm there, probably somewhere around here, I'm gonna click once. Then I have the main portion of the visor, and then I'm gonna perform a little curve right here by just selecting, pressing, and then dragging to make that curvature. Then I move my pen tool a little bit higher just to continue on that same path. Click one more time, and then I can do escape on the keyboard. By just hitting escape, you see the shape right there taking shape. All I'm gonna do now is select the shape, remove the fill. I'm not interested in having a fill on this shape right here. So let me just now move this over. I removed the fill, but I'm gonna add a stroke line, which I will now change to be the darker color, sort of the one up here. I believe is this one. Let's look at the design. So it's actually the same one as the base. So now that I've selected the color of the stroke line, I will increase the thickness of that line until I feel comfortable that it looks sort of like that one. I can then adjust it by either shrinking it. In this particular case, I will zoom in a little bit so I can have a better handle of the arrows right here, the resizing arrows. Or I can just drag this over a little bit more. Perfect. I think that looks better. And I can soften up this curve right here, make it a little softer. So I'll double click on, you can select this one, select the path and edit the vertices. And now I can pretty much adjust the curve to my liking so that it's a little bit smoother and not so curved. So something like this I think would work for me. If I zoom out and then I compare it to my design, they look pretty much similar. I think I'm satisfied with that. I'm gonna rename this cap hat or something like that. We can call it like that. I'm gonna use either some suffixes to group certain elements, and then programmatically I can name these. So you will see how I approach, how I create artboards, how I name animations, and then programmatically it's easier for me to target them and find them programmatically. So you will definitely see that a little bit later. But for now, just follow along. And for now, I'm just going to call it cap hat. I'll select, I'm still in design mode. I don't think I'm going to animate this one. Let's just keep it like that. And I'm going to remove the background, and there it is. So I do have already the cap hat. Let's proceed and do this little birthday hat, which I'm calling B-Day hat because it's like birthday, like a birthday themed hat. So I already have my cap hat. I'll just move it over to the side. If you notice here, the dimensions of my artboard are 500 by 500. So I'm going to keep that consistent across the accessories and the hats and those elements. I'm going to keep them consistent so that when I refer to them programmatically and then I render them on the screen, they show with the same dimension and they look very symmetric. So I will do the same. I will go over here at the top to the arrangement tools and I will create one additional artboard. Press shift if you want a perfect square. So I'll hold shift, hold down shift, drag, and then you can either reach the 500 right here manually. You could do this. There it is as 500, or manually you can just come up here and type the 500 like I just did right now. Let's call this B-Day hat and let's go to the design. So this is nothing more than a triangle with an ellipse at the top, a bunch of rectangles across the triangle. The triangle serves as the mask of those rectangles that are diagonally positioned. So let's do like exactly that and you'll see how easy it is. So I'll go to the birthday hat. I will start with the base element. I go to the create tools and pick a triangle. So this one you can go either way. You can make it any wide or tall, but in this case just try to go, just eyeball it in this case, so somewhere like that. The base color will be either the green or the white. In this particular case, I want it to be the background color will be the white. And now I will make it so I bring the top, that green color right there. I want to pick that color. Let me bring this guy over and then I can just go like this and pick that dark green. I'll pick that dark green and the top of the hat will be just a tiny ellipse. And I will just click here on ellipse. I'll hold shift to make it a perfect circle. Then I use Rive to help me align it appropriately. And there it is. Now I'm going to change the color here in the fills and strokes. I'll do paste on that color and there it is. Now I will create those diagonal lines which are represented here and I'll pick just that lighter version of the green. So I'll select that, copy that color, and what I will do is I will start by just creating an initial one. So it will be a rectangle like this. You could go either way, however you want to make it, as long as when we rotate it like this, it covers the whole width of the hat. So make sure that you do it wide enough so that it achieves that effect, okay? So I will make it a little wider, bring it up here, and now I'll change the color to a lighter green. And the first thing that I'll do is I'll rotate it. You could go any degrees. You could do like 30 degrees, something like that, and the negative side. So you could do minus 30. And you see it's right there. And remember how we do copies on Rive? You hold Alt and then you drag. Let yourself be guided by Rive. You can just continue holding either 2 or just one and continue doing Alt. In this case, I'll do Alt again on those two selected. And you see, like, find a way that they're pretty much aligned. Here, I'm just going to grab two more and drag them below, and I feel like they're pretty much have the same gap in between, so I think this is pretty good. I'm gonna grab all of the rectangles and I am going to do Command G for grouping them. So I'll group them, and once they're grouped, now I want to create the effect of being wrapped around that cone. I will select this lines, I can call them lines or stripes, whatever, you can do stripes, and then I will make that triangle be the masking element of those lines. So with the stripe selected, I will click on clip, I will select that triangle, and there it is. So simple as that, we were able to create a birthday hat for this character, and I think it matches pretty much exactly that one. Aside, maybe this one may have a few more lines, which is okay. With the hat created, let's come over and go to create this other hat. So I will create another artboard just for that. And that thing, that hat, we're calling it like fun hat, because it's going to be like a little bit of a childish hat with a little propeller at the top. So we could do the same thing. So I'll grab another artboard. You could just create it any size, but then you can come over here and do 500 by 500. That is the other way that you can do it. And we're going to call our artboard fun hat. Let's bring it up here at the top, align with the other ones. And if you see the design, it looks like a little bit of a dome, like that shape. So this is pretty much a rectangle with one side having a border radius applied, and then I just duplicate it a couple of times so that it looks like that shape. So we're going to start by picking one of those colors, and then we can just bring them over. But I can start exactly like I did before. Go to the create tools and I'll pick a rectangle, and I can just go something like this. And you see here, this is your rectangle, which is a basic shape. You could go here to the corner under the rectangle path, and you could click here on the link, because link means on the corner radius that this value, single value, will apply to all of the corners. But if you don't want that, you can just click the unlinking icon and just focus on only one corner. So I'm only going to work on one corner. Just make this like a high number of like 500 or something, and then you will have something like this. Maybe I can shrink it a little, and there it is. So now I will start picking the color. So I'll try to pick that red. I'll pick that same color and I'll copy it, bring it over to Rive, and I will just change my rectangle color to be this one. And there it is. Now I want pretty much the same shape, but with a different color, and giving and kind of overlapping the previous one. So I will hold this shape, press Alt, drag it to the side, and then I will pick that lighter version of the color. Perfect. I will copy that color and apply it to this overlapping rectangle. And if you see, the one on the left is a little bit narrower, so I can move this a little bit to the left and then shrink this one enough so that it gives me this effect. Now what I'll do is I'll grab the same one and move it over to the right, holding Alt, drag it over, and I can just replace this value from the top left corner to the top right corner. I didn't want to mirror the container. It's not necessary. I think I can just keep it like that. That way I don't have to be tweaking the origin or anything like that. And now I'll change this to this other color. That way the colors alternate a little bit. And last but not least, I'll grab this one, drag it over. That way it remains on the back. And then if I now change it to the alternating color, you see it remains in the back. And then all I'm going to do is flip these values from 0 to 500. And now I'll adjust this accordingly so that it looks like the one on the left. You see now all of the four components, all of the four containers are there. So now all I need to do is group them. That way they're part of the same unit. And if you see, it's looking pretty much very similar. Now I'll need to incorporate this kind of like the axis of the propeller. So it could be just any container, any rectangle. You can just grab the create tools and select rectangle, and you can just pick any rectangle. Make sure that you apply the darker color and just bring it down lower in the hierarchy so that it shows behind it. And there it is. So you may be thinking, yeah, but we're missing something. How do we create that propeller effect? How do we create it so that it looks like it's rotating while the view of this hat looks like sideways? How do you do that? Very simple. We're only going to be creating this effect, and only is going to be consumed by this artboard. just for that little tiny effect. And then that way you can see how you can continue incorporating nested artboards on another artboard, and then so on and so forth. They can become nested to other artboards as well. I'll create that effect of the propeller by creating yet another artboard, and I can just keep it right here on the side. I'm just gonna call it just like that, propeller. And this will be nothing more than a single rectangle like this. Make sure that it's centered right at the center of that container. That way we can apply that rotating effect. So that's okay. I will change the corners. I'll make them all, let's say 100. So this is fine. And I'll apply that darker red color. So in this new artboard, I'm going to be creating that effect, that rotating effect. So I'll select that darker color, and there it is. In my new artboard, I will remove that background. That way it's transparent. Once I bring it over, then I don't see any background around it, and then I can manipulate it easily. Now, all I need to do is apply that rotating effect to this container. Just like before, you're in design mode, you create all your components and whatnot, all your elements, all your shapes. Then you flip to animate. In this particular case, just so that you get into the habit, you make sure that either the state machine gets renamed like the artboard, but at least don't leave it like a state machine 1 or something. You want to change it and change it to an appropriate name. In this case, I'm still going to call it propeller. And this is just, I'm going to call it propeller as well. Because this animation will only be consumed by the hat. So that's okay. And I'm going to instead making it a loop, because I want it to loop infinitely, just rotating. So with my timeline already created and already hooked up in my state machine, I am going to create an animation inside of this timeline that lasts for 1 second. And at the starting point, at the 0 mark, I'm going to key the rotation for this element. So I'm going to select the rectangle. I'm going to key the rotation at 0 degrees. And then when it finishes, I want it to be at 300 degrees, meaning a full rotation. Now, all I need to do is just hit play, and there it is. As simple as that, you created a propeller. How do you bring this propeller over to this and make it look like it's actually sideways? Very easy. So with our propeller done, we can move it over to the side. Let's focus now on this fun hat version of it. I will remove the background because I don't need it. Now back on my fun hat, I will just also rename the state machine just in case. I'll do fun hat, and I'll call this timeline fun hat just in case I try to add something in the timeline. For now, the hat will stay still, so even this is not needed, but I'm gonna add a nested artboard that represents the propeller right here. So to my fun hat, I'll select that artboard. I will go to the arrangement tools, select nested artboard. I will click anywhere in here because I'm going to adjust it later on. I'll click and I'll find the one that says propeller. Remember, that's why I said this is a very convenient way for you to find another artboard. That's why you need to name them appropriately. So I'll select the propeller, and if I adjust it and probably put it right at the center of the hat, see, like it's adding it there. I don't need it. Let me try it one more time. Let's stick with the design mode, and I'm just gonna add my propeller to just be another element. I don't need to animate it any further. That's why I needed to be in design mode instead. So if I keep it there anyway, and now I go to animate, I didn't need to animate this further. I just needed it to be a nested artboard in my artboard. So if I hit play, you see how that just rotates there. But if I go to the fun hat and then I hit my state machine and then I play it, it will be just forever. So you see, this animation is not even needed unless you're going to be doing further animations to this hat. But because it is a nested artboard, it already comes with animations. You don't need to add any additional ones. So the effect that I'm going to achieve is I'm going to make it look like it's sideways and it's actually doing that full rotation. So the way that you achieve this is just by shrinking. Let's go back to design mode. I'm going to shrink my artboard, and then I'm gonna bring it like this, somewhere like there, that it looks that is being held by that axis, by that little device that is actually holding the propeller in place. And check this out. Now if I press play, look what it looks. So it looks pretty cool, right? It looks like it was actually rotating around that axis. So all I need to do is probably maybe enlarge it a little bit, make it a little wider so it looks a little bit more realistic. So there it is. And you see, while I'm in design mode, I could do that. Animate is just so I can play the underlying animations as well. And there it is. If I zoom it out, now it looks like it's rotating. I can change the speed. Remember how we applied simple animations to our nested artboards? So let's do that. I'll select propeller. I come over here. I'll remove that default animation, but then I'm gonna add a simple animation instead. So I select propeller. This is the artboard, and then this is the underlying animation. So I'll select simple, come over here and increase the speed to 2, and make sure that I'm playing all the time. I need to make sure that this is also applied in design mode. So let me do it again, propeller. I'll select the animation, and there it is, twice the speed, and keep it playing. And now if I hit animate and play the state machine, check this out. Now it looks pretty cool, right? So I love the fact that you could do like these kind of things in your animation, and then you can do those composite animations. Like one little animation is part of the other and whatnot. So this is pretty cool. I think we're pretty much done with this. All I'm going to do is come back over to these ones and just rename the state machines. Remember, getting to the habit of renaming your state machines appropriately. So I'll call this B-Day Hat, and also just rename this timeline. Even though it's not doing anything, I just want to rename it accordingly. Because later, if I want to do something, at least I know that I have one basic animation that I can tap into. This one is called Cap Hat. See, I like to name, because that way when I select them from the drop down, I will find the corresponding name, and then I don't get confused or anything. So now how do we apply these hats to our character? So now this is the next step in which I am going to toggle based on whichever the user selects. I am going to add those in there. First, I'm going to create them inside a solo. That way you see how they're positioned. And then later on, we're going to make it so that you can programmatically toggle those. But for now, let's at least create the foundation, which is going to be a solo. And remember what solos are similar to groups, but only one of the elements inside of the solo is rendered at any given time. So for now, I'm just going to create the basic solo that has the 3 elements, and then only one will be shown at any given time. So let's go back to our design of the full body, and then I'm going to go to the body of that guy. So if I hide it, say I want the hat to be part of the body, not the legs, not the eyes, not the mouth, just the body. So it's going to encompass all of that. I want to make it a child of that. So we can even start bringing some of those elements like inside of the body. What I'm going to do, make sure that you're still in design mode. I am going to bring one of those nested artboards. We're going to bring 3 nested artboards: the cap hat, the birthday hat, and the fun hat. So I will select my arrangement tools and select nested artboard. I'll click that. Just click somewhere here. So I'll just select it and select cap hat. And there it is. So I'm going to grab my cap hat. I'll hold shift so I can enlarge it proportionally, and I will adjust it and bring it maybe into position to where I feel like is a good position for it to be. I think the cap, I wanted to keep it like somewhere here on the side and rotate it so that it looks like the character has it on, but like in the back of somehow. You remember, I want to make it part of the body, so you need to either bring it inside of the body under all the other components. So I'm gonna just add it into place right behind the body circle, and there it is. You see, so I already have the cap hat right in place. Next, I want to add the birthday hat. The birthday hat will show on the other side. So I will add another nested artboard, go to my arrangement tools, select nested artboard, just click here, click anywhere so that you can add it first and then adjust it. Click, find birthday hat, there it is. Now I'll adjust it by doing some rotation and translation of the element, maybe enlarge it a little bit, rotate it a little more, and make sure that it looks like it's wearing it. So I'm gonna now drag the birthday hat into position, which is gonna be inside of the body, but under that body ellipse. So it's right there, you see? So I have now my cap hat, the body hat, all underneath the body. And last but not least, I'm gonna add that third one, which is the fun hat. Same thing, go to the arrangement tools, click on nested artboard, click there. I'll click anywhere around here, select fun hat, and there's my fun hat. It's still not playing. Later, we will apply those properties that will make it play. And then now I'll rotate it, adjust it. I'll hold shift on my keyboard so that I can rotate it, and it scales accordingly and symmetrically. So I now do a little bit of a rotation, maybe some adjustments in here, bring it over there, and now I'll just bring it into place which is inside of the body, but under that circle that represents like the torso. Now, they all look like they're on top of each other. That's not the effect that I'm trying to achieve. What I want is I want to show one at a time. Later, we will provide some logic to then show the appropriate one. But for now, let's just create a solo that wraps the three of them and then just displays one at any given time. So let's select all the three hats, all the three nested artboards. I am going to right click and say wrap in solo. And there it is. And by default, the first one gets pre-selected. I'm going to rename my solo called hats. And now you can see how the fun hat is here, but I can select the birthday hat, or I can select the cap hat. And this is the beauty of the solos. So solos is like grouping, but only one will be shown at any given time. This simplifies the way that you have to show or hide some components. This was actually done before by having to show one, hide the others, show the other one, make sure the other ones are hidden as well, and you have to toggle the visibility on or off. Solos brought this amazing feature so that you can just toggle things on or off or programmatically. This is great for when you're creating skins, when you're creating options for your characters, just like this one. And by default, you can even say, I don't want any of them to be shown. And you can even have one empty one, that way you don't show anything. But later on, I will show you how you can trigger that with booleans and whatnot and triggers. So for now, let's just keep it like that. Now you know that you're able to toggle between either one of those. The fun hat, let's make it by selecting that nested animation, that nested artboard. And instead, I am going to remove that basic one and try to bring in the simple animation to that, so I can apply the checkbox right here and just select it, and then that way it keeps playing all the time. So now if I press play, you see how now you can see that animation by default. Let me actually select the main state machine, and then if I hit play, you see that there. And in real time, you can select these ones and you can see what they look like. So this is coming together pretty nicely. I love the way that it is coming out. And then now we kind of have pretty much that basic functionality in place. Later on, we're going to bring it to life with code and applying inputs, applying listeners. And then later on with Flutter, we will be able to trigger those programmatically with code. So with that in place, let's continue on. And based on our design, I think we're pretty much done with those hat selections. Let's wrap it up by adding a few more elements. We need this third button right here. We definitely need to add that third button. This button also has this animated icon. We need to add this little guy peeking through, as well as the Mr. Bubbles. The bubbles effect right next to Mr. Bubbles. We need to make that. So let's wrap those up. I'm going to start by creating this little animation right here, which is this icon. And then that way we wrap up this save name button. So let's try that. I'm going to just even use one of the existing buttons as the foundation for that. So why don't we tackle that and let's continue moving on. So let's continue moving forward, and we're going to create some of the assets for this page. Also, they're part of this page as well. We're going to start by creating this little icon right here that represents like the silhouette of our character. And it's just going to also later be used even as an icon. So, and this is pretty much what I do. Like, honestly, I don't use SVGs anymore unless strictly required, or I'm not going to animate them at all. And that's very rare. So what I've been using right now is just bringing the SVGs into Rive, animate them slightly. Even that little bit of effort gives an edge over other applications, because that kind of transmits to the user that the developer took the trouble to make this experience unique, give you a little bit of engagement with your application, bring a little bit of interactivity. And the beauty of it is that Rive optimizes your animations, and even the SVGs that you import, once you export them as an RIV file, as a Rive file, they're even more optimized sometimes. And you even have less memory footprint. They're optimized for performance, and they're animated. And that's pretty good, as opposed to using just a raw SVG file that doesn't have any animations on its own. And you can just add those animations via Rive and just bring it in. You provide some edge to your application, which is pretty good. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's try to accomplish this one right here. I'm going to be creating that icon right there. So let's start with that, and then we'll wrap up this button right here. So I'm going to select that. I'm going to select that color. It's kind of like a darker blue, as if you notice. Then I'm going to come right down here. See, I have like our icons there. So this icon, I think I've been using a 500 by 500. So let's do the same thing. I'm going to create another, be in design mode, and create another artboard. Go to the arrangement tools. select artboard, come over here, change it to 500 by 500. There it is. I will call this just mascot icon. You could call it anything, but in this particular case, I would love for you to create unique names for each artboard. That way you can find it better while you're either making them as nested artboards or even programmatically. And then you know what you're referring to and you know what to find and to find the exact thing that you're looking for. So I'll just call it mascot icon for now. Let me remove the background. And if you see the design, this is nothing more than an ellipse, 2 rectangles, 2 ellipses, and then this is going to have like a slight animation of the eyes and whatnot. You could have used some of the other components that are there, but I don't want to mess up with them. I'd rather create just a brand new one set of assets, and then I think I should be good with that because we're going to create it very easily. Again, practice. Practice your common shapes, practice your basic shapes, practice masking, and those techniques that I've been showing you all along. I'm going to start with an ellipse. I'll just do it like that, hold shift to make it a perfect circle, line it up at the center of the artboard, go ahead and pick the color. I will grab the color from my design. And still in design mode, I will go to fills and strokes, paste the color, there it is. Now remember, use a mask to show half of it, grab another element from the create tools, select the rectangle. This could be any size as long as it's covering the right area of your ellipse. In this case, this is perfect. And I'm going to select my ellipse, click on clip, select the masking element and remove the color from the masking element. That way the masked element gets revealed. Now I can group these two. Remember, select both of them, Command G for grouping. I will bring this component a little lower and that's fine there. Now I think we're good there. Now let's create the effect of having the eyes like that. So I'll create one little rectangle and an ellipse just like so, and then I'll copy those. So I'll start with a rectangle. You could do it just like that, simple. Do a ellipse right on top of it like this and adjust it accordingly. Let yourself be guided by the guides in Rive, okay? Select both of them, Command G for grouping, bring it a little higher. And because both of them now have been grouped, they only show the same color because both of them have the same color. And now it's easier for us to apply the color. I'll just do paste because I still had it in memory, and there it is. Now I'll call this right eye, and I'll do the same approach, hold Alt or copy paste, whichever way you want to go. I could do Alt and drag to the side. And now I have my 2 eyes like that. You see that it looks very similar to this. And what I'm going to do now is change the origin of these components. That way I can animate them from a lower anchor point, from a lower pivot. So I'll start selecting this one. Remember how to change the origin. Go to the transform tools, select freeze. And with this, the freeze active, now you can adjust the origin by using one of the arrows. Maybe I'll bring it lower to where there it is. You see it's a little bit lower, and there it is. Now you hit done, and now we can animate this using this as the pivot instead of this, because remember, this looks like that. So now I'm going to change this as well. Go to the transform tools, select freeze, select it, and now bring it lower just like the other one. And now you hit done, and this is perfect. So now with this icon in place, let me zoom out. I think this could be a little larger. So it's still in design mode. What I can do is I can select everything, and I will use Alt Shift to enlarge all of them. I think the eyes are not getting picked up, which is okay. I can grab the 2 and group them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to then enlarge these together. There it is. And now I'll enlarge this separately. So I will hold Shift and Alt. I will lower this a little bit, bring all of them now together a little bit higher. You see, like just by highlighting everything together, you get one set of origin and pivot points. And then that way I can just move them all together. And then now what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to make it in the center, and there it is. Now this is my design for the mascot icon, which I will use. If you see, I'll use it for this button, and then I'll use it later for when I trigger the changing of the name of the mascot. And I am going to now animate it very slightly. You don't have to go really fancy or really crazy with this one. So I'm going to flip to animate mode, and there it is. I'm going to change my state machine. I'm going to call it mascot icon as well. I'll change the timeline to just call it mascot icon, and the animation will be just moving the eyes, which is okay. Let me go back here and change the animate background to be, yeah, something like that. That way I can see where everything is. And the mascot icon, it will be a loop or a ping pong, could be. I'll try a ping pong, and then I will only be moving the eyes. So this will be an easy one. So let's just do that. Select the group of the eyes. I can rename this group. I'll call them eyes. This is my right eye. I'll call this left eye now. Left eye, because I have the left and the right. And now left eye, I will key the rotation. The same thing with the right eye. Key both of the rotations. And then somewhere along the animation, I will rotate one to one side. The other one, maybe a little bit here. Then roughly change their positions randomly. I don't have to be like really fancy or anything. This is just gonna be some slight animation that you may want to do to the eyes, but you don't have to go really crazy and make it even so that it looks like that. Let me play it. That's okay. That's totally fine. It's just something, it doesn't have to be symmetric. It doesn't have to be synchronized. I just wanted to make it really slight and random. So I'm going to highlight all of them, smooth out my animation by make it cubic. And now if you see this animation looks a little cool, that's okay. We can just keep it like that. That's totally fine. But at least I just wanted to show you that you can add, even to the tiniest elements, you can add animations and you will still get an optimized version of the file. You remember how initially our file, the original file, was like in the bytes, not even in the kilobytes. It was in the bytes. It's not even half a kilobyte. Let's try now incorporating this into our new button. Remember, we said that we wanted to add one additional button. This button is going to be called Save Name, because that's the one that we're going to use for that. So just like before, switch to design mode, leverage the existing assets that you may have, because it's going to be pretty much the same look and feel. So I will hold Alt on this wave button. I'll just drag it down. I'll rename this Save Name or Name Button. Yeah, we could just say Name Button, BTN. And you see here it says Name Button. Let's flip to animate, and let's also, later we're gonna of course deal with changing everything in here, changing the state machine and whatnot. For now, let's just change the styles. We don't have to go that fancy. At least I just wanted to name the main artboard. But now let me pick the colors of that button, because I wanted to reuse that. So I'll pick that blue, dark blue. It's gonna be the bottom, the base of that button. If you select the whole artboard, the cool thing is that you get shown here like all the colors that are involved, the colors that are applied to all the elements in that group or within that artboard. So this is the darker one. Perfect. Now I'll pick the lighter version of the blue, which is this one right here. I'll copy that, come over, and I think it represents this one. There it is. And last but not least, the lighter version of that, which is right above. I'll pick that and I'll just grab that color. Perfect. I'll definitely need that blue, but I think I already have it. I'm going to just wrap this up by doing this. My nested artboard here in the name button is still pointing to the hand wave. Let's replace that by the mascot icon. So all I need to do, remember, when you select a nested artboard, and if you go to the design mode, select the hand wave, and here's because this is grouped. So what I'm going to do is select the underline actual nested artboard. And the cool thing is that you can just select one nested artboard placeholder. And here on the right hand side, you get the artboard drop down that you can just swap it out by any other one. So I'm going to swap it out by the appropriate one. I think I called it mascot icon. And it says, are you sure you want to do that? Because you're going to lose all the animations. Remember, if you did any simple animations or remap animations, they will all be wiped out because there's going to be a new one here. So yes, you do yes. And there it is. I'm going to change the font color to the one of the little icon. And this one is going to be called Save Name. Probably make it a little smaller. And right now I think I'm using 120. I'm going to bring it down to like 100. Adjust the alignment. I'll let myself be guided by Rive's alignment mechanism. I can even adjust it a little bit, and there it is. So now we have our name button. And if I ever try to play on the main state machine, look at the icon, is right incorporated and is actually animating. I love that. Awesome. So you see, we're making really great progress. We're almost about to be done with all the assets, and then we can move on to other topics such as inputs and listeners. Let's wrap up now this little peeking guy which is the one that we're going to be doing now, this right here. Let's build that one out. And this one, we're actually going to be reusing a lot of the elements that we've done in the past, and then you will see it in just a second. Now let's focus on this part of the design. This is just like a nice to have, but I wanted to add it anyway. So when the user is here and is interacting with the character, they can pick the hats, they can make a jump, they can make it wave. At some point, I want to click on this icon on the top right corner, and then a little form is going to just pop up and slide from the bottom, and then this little character is just gonna like peek its eyes out a little bit, kind of like greeting you. And this is like a nice to have, a nice little touch, and this is what actually makes your applications differ from any other one. Just a slight animation, a small touch. This is actually why some of my applications, again, are pretty cool and they differ from any other ones, because you provide that extra touch of uniqueness. You give it like your own flavor, and stuff like this is what actually makes a difference. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create this little effect. It's just gonna be like a circle opening up like from nowhere, and then the character is just gonna peek its eyes out a little bit and kind of like stay there hanging in there. So let's try to accomplish this little animation. Let's do it real quick. So we're gonna be creating an artboard that is gonna leverage some of the pre-existing artboards. We're gonna add them as nested artboards, the one from the eyes and whatnot. We're gonna be creating that animation of the hole opening up from the ground, and then the character just peeking its eyes from below. So let's try that. I'm gonna bring this over to the side. I'll just keep it right there. Come over to our Rive stage, and now I'll create an additional artboard. And actually, let me bring it a little closer to this, because it's probably, I'm gonna be leveraging some of these items. So I'm gonna be creating this artboard as a perfect square. So I'll bring the shift like that. And if I look at the design, well, it's actually a little bit narrower on the height. So I'm gonna do this and shrink it a little bit like that. I'll name this artboard mascot header, because it's kind of like the header of this little form right there. So it's like the header. So let's try that. At the bottom, there's like a circle. You see like an ellipse, and it's like narrow. So let's start with the core of the design, which we will go to the create tools and use an ellipse as that foundation. So I will go somewhere like this. Make sure that is aligned horizontally. I will make this, actually, I will just make it black, and there it is. What else do we need? We need an ellipse that kind of protrudes from this ellipse, and it looks like it's speaking. Remember the same approach that we did for the mouth, exactly the one that we're going to do here. So I am going to create another ellipse that overlaps this other one. I'm going to select the create tools, pick ellipse, hold shift to make a perfect circle, and do something like that. You see that it's gonna look like it's coming out of the hole like that. It will be the same blue as this background, so I will just pick that same color. I don't need to go back to the design. I can just pick it right from here, and then I'll use the eyedrop, pick this blue, and there it is. Remember, how do I make it so that this is masked and looks like it's coming out of the hole while it's showing like it's coming out, but overlapping this other container, this other ellipse back there? Remember the trick. I will duplicate this ellipse, which I'm gonna call hole. I will duplicate this one, copy paste you can do. I'm gonna call this hole mask. Actually, not this hole. It should be hole like this. And then I'll say hole mask. There it is. Now I'll bring this above everything. And on this shape, I will go to its underlined path and edit the vertices. I'll hit convert, and now I will make it so that it covers pretty much the height of the artboard, so that it covers not only the body of the creature, but also the eyes when they pop out of the hole. And that is the effect that I'm gonna create. So you can escape. Now what I'm gonna do is I'll select my ellipse, and I will hit clip on the right hand side, select the item that is masking me, and I'll select the mask now and remove the fill, so that I don't want to see the fill of the mask. I just don't want to see the mask at all. I just want to see the item that is being revealed by the mask. I'll remove the fill, and there it is. Perfect. So it's looking very similar to this one. Now all I need to do is incorporate both of the eyes in here. Let's try to do that. So I will bring, remember, a nested artboard. So I'll select the arrangement tools. I'll pick nested artboard, click anywhere, and then I'll select the long eye. There it is. I have one right here. So I will just add it right there. I'll need a duplicate of this. So you could do Alt and drag. There they are. So see, it's looking very similar to this one, which is okay. But now I want them all to be part of the same unit. I want all of them to be masked by the same hole mask. So long eye, like this one, the left eye, this right eye, and I want the ellipse, which is the body, to be part of the same group. So I will select body, and then I'll do Command, and then I select them like that. Command G for grouping, and that's my group. Now let's see if it's actually being masked. You see the eyes are not being masked, so I need to do that masking again. So the body is the only one that is actually being clipped. So I will remove that whole mask from the body. So this group is actually the mascot. Instead, I want the whole mascot, including the eyes, to be masked. So now to the mascot, I'll click on clip. I'll select the mask, which is somewhere here, and there it is. Now, if I bring the mascot down or up, now you see it picking out of the hole, and that is the effect that I'm trying to achieve. What we will do is, I think if I just press play, the eyes are moving. There they are. All I need to do is, like I did before, change the speed of 1, or even make them so that they go opposite ways. So I could even do remap on that. For now, I'm just gonna change them to simple. So I'm gonna hit pause, select my mascot, go to the left eye, and I will replace this by a simple animation and make it so that the speed is probably 0.75, just a little lower. I need to make sure that both of them are playing still, like at least this one. The other one, it will just play by default. But if you switch it from simple or remap, you still need to apply that. So now if I play it again, you see one is a little bit slower than the other, which is exactly what I wanted. But we're still not quite there. We still need to make it so that the hole opens up and then the character comes out of the hole. How do you do that? Let's try that. So let's go back to design. I have my hole over here. I have the mask and I have the mascot right here. So now what I want to do first is make the hole open up. It's going to start from nothing. It's going to be like invisible. Then it's going to gradually appear, grow, and then the character should come out of the hole. So let's try that. I'm gonna flip to animate, and as always, rename your state machine accordingly. In this case, I'm gonna call it mascot header, and this is gonna be a one-shot animation as well, so I'm gonna call this peek, so like it's peeking. So the animation will consist of the hole opening up. The properties that I'm going to key on the hole will be its visibility, not the position, but I think just the scale, and I think that should be it. So we need to make sure that it's going to be invisible, and we're going to do, yes, actually, I think I'm going to do scaling and positioning as well. So I'll do scale and positioning, all of them. We don't need to do rotation. So those are the items that I'm going to be keying at this level. So when it starts, it's going to be small and invisible. And then at some point during the animation, it's going to be exactly the way it is, like full visibility and full size. So I'm going to key those again and keep them like that, not rotation, but only the position. And then the way that I do that is at least I ensure that I know what my end goal is, and instead of doing it initially and then redoing it again, I don't want to do that. The way that I do it is like do it like this, so I know that I end up with my desired style and the desired position and scaling and whatnot as I originally designed it. So it's just like this, so it's gonna remain like that. But initially, what I want to do, let me hide the mascot for just a second. You can just click on the eye right here like this, and I'll select the hole. And now what I'll do is at the beginning, at position 0, I want it to be shrunk like this and also invisible. So I'll just mark the blend visibility of normal to 0. And then there it is. Now, when I move to this position, you see I need to now bring it again, but I needed to apply it to the size. So let me do that again one more time. So instead, we need to key the sizes as well. So I'm going to key the sizes. Also here, I'm going to key the sizes in this. Okay, at least this is here is already keyed for this one. So that's okay. And then when I come over, this is where I need to apply the keys on the sizes and origins, not just on the shapes up there. So now I can go back over and now shrink it to what I wanted it. I wanted it like there. Now when I move, it comes full visible and then it shows the full version. You see? Now, all I need to do here is make sure that I show at 0% visibility, and then here at 100% visibility. Here is 100%, and then here I want it as 0 visibility. So let me do 0 here, and then when I reach here, I want it to be 100. You see 0 visibility, and then when I come here, full visibility, 100% visibility. Now I can animate this piece. I can just make it either like elastic or something. I think that's a cool little animation of the circle, and then it just remains open like that. Now, next thing is once the hole is fully open, or maybe even halfway through it, now I can bring the mascot up from below, and then it peeks through, and then it just remains where it is. So let's make it visible. Remember, this is the way that I want it to end up. This is how I want my character to end up at the end of the animation. So I want to retain this position in this scale. That is why I usually do it at the beginning, and then I move the key after I've created the way that I want it. For example, in this case, I'll select the mascot, and I will select the position. I'm actually going to only apply the Y position. So the way that I want to do it is only when it gets to like around this point, let me see, it just grows. Like somewhere around here, I want it to peak from the bottom, but I want to keep this value. So I'll move this over. And now while I'm doing this, now I can do this one and then I'll bring it lower. But you see, I already persisted the original one. Now when I do this, you see that it comes out. And I retain the original one because that's how I know that I want it to end up as the original design. So if you see it again, the hole opens up and then the character comes out. But I want it to come out also using an elastic animation. Let's try it again. Hole opens up and then the character just comes out. Let me move it a little bit later. That way I give it time for the hole to open up and then the character to come out fully. And then if I bring it all the way from the state machine and I execute the state machine instead and I play it, you will see now how the eyes still remain moving while the original animation of this artboard just ends where it did. Meaning open up the hole, the character pops out, but then because this is a nested animation using a simple animation applied to it, then the eyes continue moving, exactly what I wanted. So this is perfect. I love the way that it came out, and this is exactly the effect that I was trying to achieve. Let me hit it again. There it is. That's all we wanted. Now I'll select the artboard and I'll remove the background because I want it invisible. Now when I bring it into Flutter, now we can just add it there and you'll see how you can see the background right through the character even as it moves and it picks out of the form right here. So that's exactly what I wanted. So then we should be good there. And last but not least, let's do the Mr. Bubbles header right up here. The Mr. Bubbles header is just this component right here that has like little bubbles on the side and it has the text Mr. Bubbles. Later on in this series, I'm going to show you how to change programmatically that text. We will see it in a separate video, how you can apply a change to this text programmatically, even if the text is on Rive. You can just programmatically change it from Flutter by targeting that element and then just sending the text and editing the text in place. So now let's proceed and wrap it up with, I believe this is the last component of this application. We've already done the character. We've already done the jumping, the waving, the idle. We've done the buttons. We've done the animations inside. We did the accessories, which are 3 little hats. One hat has the animation of a fun hat with a little propeller on top. We did the little icon. We did the peeking guy from it and also leverage some of the existing nested artboards. And last but not least, we're going to focus on this Mr. Bubbles title component, if you want to call it, with some bubbles on the side. So let's focus on that and then we will wrap up this video with that. Let's focus now on the last element of this character and this whole application that we're building. The last item that we're going to be fulfilling is this title right here with some of the bubbles on the side. So we're going to start creating this title that we will later on be able to edit programmatically, like changing the top label. So this consists of 2 labels, like the title and then the name of the character. Later, we will going to be able to edit one of those and I'm going to show you. But for now, let's create the core of this design, which is composed of 2 labels, one smaller than the other, stacked up vertically, and then a series of bubbles coming from the side. So we're going to start with the main text. So let me just find a spot for those, and you can just go any arbitrary size, but make sure that at least it's wider than it is taller. So you could do something like this. You don't have to go so precise, but at least give it some breathing room around it. So I'm going to need a label that says bubbles and then another one called like Mr. I love the text support on Rive. And the great thing is that you can animate text. For now, we're not going to touch on animating text, but you can explore some of the existing Rive tutorials on animating text, which is pretty cool. And you can also make it editable. So for now, we're just going to go really simple. I'll pick one of the text elements in here and I'm just going to say bubbles. I'll make this exactly what I'm expecting here, like this. Let's go with this dark blue. So I'll select that dark blue. There it is. I'll select it right here and I'll make that the color of my font. There it is. I'll make this a little larger, probably 200. Let's make it a little 250 maybe. There it is. And I'm going to keep it right there. I want to leave some room on the sides. Let me change the artboard. Let's remain on the design mode. Always make sure to be in design mode while you're doing the design. Here, I'm going to call this mascot title. Let's call it like that. And I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to leave some breathing room for the bubbles when I add those animations in there. And I'm going to add one more text label up here. And then this is going to say Mr. Will be much smaller than that. Let's make it 180. Maybe I'll just place it right up here. I'll select both of them and try to bring it a little below. Remember, because I want to edit the text in place and I want it to extend to the left and be aligned on the right, make sure to change the anchor point, change the origin by using the feature of freeze. So you select freeze, you bring it over to the right like that, hit done. Same thing with the bubbles one, click on freeze, change the origin, bring it all the way to the right. That way it anchors on the right. And you see here, I'll still keep it as aligned right. Same with this one. I need to change the top label. Just go with that same light blue. Let me copy that and bring it over. I'll change the font color right on the right hand side on that panel. So I think I'm pretty much halfway there. So I have the Mr. Bubbles, just like the title right up here. And now how do you create this bubbles effect and then make it so that it shows right here? Just like the ones before. You're going to start by creating one animation of one bubble just going up, and then you will duplicate that and create the one for the bubbles, and it will be a separate nested artboard. Then you bring that nested artboard right over here and you just put it in place. But I'm going to show you one additional concept that we haven't introduced, which is called constraints. So constraints in Rive are a way for you to control the properties of an object through another target object. In our case, what we want to show is a bubble that follows a path. So you see how the properties of the bubble will actually be affected by another object. The object will be a curve. Some of the constraints can set limits on these properties, while others can copy properties from one object to another. What we're going to focus on is one specific constraint. You can explore all the other constraints on your own. You can go to the Rive YouTube channel and they have a bunch of things on constraints so you can take a look, or you can use the documentation. The constraint that we're going to use is called follow path. So I'm going to show you how that works. So for example, if the effect that you're trying to achieve is like a bubble follow a path, this is how you do it. So I'll select one artboard. I'll create one artboard right here. I'm going to make it a little narrower and I'm going to call it single bubble, just like that. A bubble would be just a regular ellipse. So I'm going to go to the create tools, select ellipse, and I'm going to put an ellipse down here. I'll make sure that it has this same blue color because I want to match the title right here, like that effect. And there it is. So how do I make it so that this bubble goes like this, kind of like in a little bit of a curve, but from beginning to the end? The way that you do it is you create a path by using the pen tool. I'm going to go to the create tools, select the pen tool, and I'm going to draw a path that I would envision this ellipse to follow. For example, I can start at this point, then do a little bit of a curve here, then go to this side, do another curve, and then end right here. I'll hit escape so that I can get out of this edit mode. I can go inside of my path and adjust it a little bit by editing the vertices. And I want to maybe make this a little bit curved like that, shrink this a little, maybe make this here like that. And I think I'm satisfied with this curve. But I don't want the fill effect on this curve. I just want the line. So I'll remove the fill and there it is. That is a curve that now I want the circle to follow. So this, I'll call this bubble path and I'll call this bubble. And now let me apply that. So you select the element that you want to be affected by a constraint. And then you select the element and click on constraints right under clip. I'll click constraints. You have like follow path, scroll, scale, transition, some of the others. I would invite you to go to the Rive YouTube channel and take a look at some of the others. But right now in this video, we're only going to focus on the follow path. So you select follow path and there it is. And my bubble is selected and you see constraints that it says follow path. Now you click here on this option to open up the component options. I'll click in there. And now you see that the follow path constraint is applied. The name is follow path. And the target is empty. You need to select the target. What would be the target for this ellipse constraint? The path that I created earlier. So I'm going to select it. There it is. Now you see that my ellipse has a bubble path as its target for this follow path constraint. Strength is 0 and distance is 0%. Because you're doing a follow path, what this does, the distance 0 means it starts at the beginning of that constraint, at the beginning of that path. If you say distance 100%, that means go the full length of this path and then put it all the way at the end. If I put 100, it just reaches the top. But I don't want to do this manually. I want to do it with an animation. So let's bring it back to 0. There it is. You could also change, for example, some of the options like orient so that it orients to the path. Let's say if you do 100, you see how it remains like that. It's oriented with the path. But I want it to actually follow. See, for example, here you also have the offset, but I don't want to do that offset. It kind of changes the position of that, of the item. I just want to keep it like that by default. But what this will do is actually follow the path. If you see 100%, look at how it goes. It goes exactly and follows even the direction of the path. And that's exactly what I want. So you keep it like that. You start at 0, and then we're going to bring it to 100 once we apply the animation to it. So let's do that. Let's keep it at 0, the distance. And then these items, we're going to be able to key those elements as well. We're going to be able to key those properties in our timeline. So in our single bubble artboard, let's flip it now to animate. I'm going to rename my state machine single bubble. I'm going to call my animation single bubble, but this would be a loop animation as opposed to either like a ping pong or a one-shot animation. I want the bubble to continue just going up. So the effect is the bubble will appear, will be hidden, then will appear, it will run through the whole path and then disappear all the way at the top, and then rinse and repeat, start all over again. So let's try that. So the way that I wanted to do is animate that follow path constraint. Let's go there. So I'll select my bubble. I go to the constraint again. I go to that component and select distance 0. That means 0%. So that means start at 0 at position 0 within my timeline. Then what I'm going to do is now reach the end of your path, go back again to the bubble and change the constraint one more time, but instead of being 0, it will be 100%. What does that mean? The timeline assisted me in interpolating the values and programmatically affect that property just by using the timeline and keying the property. I just keyed the initial property and the end one, and then just Rive filled in the blanks for me. And if I do it like that, this is not a one-shot animation, of course. I want it to be a loop. So this is exactly what I want it to be. Let's change the background of the artboard for just a little bit while we design, and check this out. So it will be like that. It will just be a bubble just going up and down. But it still looks a little fake. I want it to fade in as it comes in and fades out as it reaches the end. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to pause, go back here, select my bubble, and then I'll use the blend property to change the opacity. So it's 100% opacity. That's okay. At this position. Here is kind of like where I want it to come online. So I'm going to be, boom, I'll make it 100 there. But then I'm going to go back and bring this back down to 0. So what I do is start at 0, turn fully visible, continue the path. Right here, I also want it to disappear. So what I want is set this to 100, come right back, set it to 100 right there, but then come right back and flip it back to 0. Why? The reason why I did 100 there is because I wanted to key the last element and make sure that I don't forget. That was there in place. It's much easier to do it that way for me. But you see how now here is fully visible, and then now it disappears. There it is. And now if you play it, it looks like it's actually popping up, like it's coming out, like popping, and then doing that. You can even go further, make it like smaller while it's here. You can even key those properties. I can key the scale for example, like at this point. Let me select that and then see I'm keying those elements. And I'm going to just make sure that here, those elements are also keyed. That way they don't get propagated all the way. If you do that, if you only key the initial element, they get propagated all the way down. So that's why I like to key them individually. And then for example, like somewhere around here, I'll just change it to be smaller. And then that way the other ones are persisted. So now it comes out smaller, and then see, like it didn't do, so it actually applied on the size. So let's do it again. Instead of the scale, it's actually the size. So I'm going to change those right here. Key those sizes in there. There we go. And right here as well. So it's already, so if I select that, I'll key the size, but then I'll go right back to the original position. Now change the size right here. There it is, something like that. And then now it will become larger, play along, and then go all the way, and then probably just disappear. And that's exactly what I want. That's the effect of the bubble. Now all I need to do is duplicate the same effect and make it look like it's multiple bubbles. But at least I've already achieved the initial goal of making it look like a bubble coming out of somewhere and then just vanishing into obscurity, right? So I'll just do pause on this. Let's remove the background. We don't need this. Now that I have my single bubble animation in there, let's create another one that will encompass multiple of those nested artboards. And each one of those is actually going to be even rotated in different positions and at different speeds to make it look like it's multiple bubbles coming out of it. So let's do that. I'm going to go back to the design mode. I'm going to create another artboard. This one is going to be called all bubbles because it's going to incorporate like multiple bubbles, right? So I'm going to say all bubbles. And then I'm here, I'll remove the background, and all I'm going to do while I'm selected in there, while I selected that artboard, I'm going to bring 3 nested artboards of the same kind. So it will be single bubble. There it is, single bubble. I'll shrink this one, probably just position it there. That's the original one. Right here, you can even do, remember, Alt and drag, or just do copy paste, Command C, Command V, Command C, Command V, Command C, Command V. There it is. And then now I have 3 bubbles. So single bubble, let's go to the animation options. So I'll go simple. It's just 1 times speed, like at 1 speed, 100% speed, 100% of the original speed. And then now I'll go to the second one. I'll probably make it a little larger, maybe move it around, rotate it a little bit, and bring it a little lower. And now I'll make this probably 1.5 of the speed. And then the third one, which is still there, I'll rotate it the other way, bring it over, probably make it smaller, and instead will be the slower version of the 3. So I will go simple and I'll do 0.75 and make sure that it's playing. Now all bubbles artboard is nothing more than a wrapper around the other 3. It's nothing more than a wrapper around the same nested artboard, duplicated a couple of times, copied a couple of times, and then just animated at different intervals at different speeds. And then check this out. If you just play this core all bubbles, which I'm going to rename accordingly, I'll probably just rename this one as well. But if I play the core state machine, which is just saying, just run whatever you have. If you have any animations, run it. If not, that's okay. But if you have any nested animations, play them. And that's exactly what this does. So you see, this is the effect that I was trying to achieve, kind of like bubbles on the side of the title. And now that you've already created that, remember, we've already used the follow path constraint. That's pretty good. You can use it with any other type of effect. So now I'm going to bring it over here to the title, which I'm going to use, and I'm going to incorporate it as a nested artboard. So you see, we created one, then made it as a nested artboard of another one. But then now that grouping that I did with those 3 bubbles, I'm going to bring it as a single unit in here, and I'm going to select nested artboard. Make sure that you're in design mode, do nested artboard, select the all bubbles, and now I can shrink it, bring it over, probably just keep it somewhere there, and let me see what it looks just by default. There it is. That's exactly what I'm trying to achieve. I already have the bubbles right there. You can even tweak it a little bit, like rotate it and maybe move it like somewhere there. Now, if you play it again, check it out. Now this looks pretty cool. Like it's coming like near the B. You can even bring it a little closer if you want to. That's okay. If I play it again, there it is. Now I want to duplicate and move this over and make it like mirror it, or even change the speed as well. You can do that. So this is the all bubbles nested artboard. I'm going to copy this one, Command C, Command V, and then I'll bring my all bubbles over to this side, which I'll rotate and bring it over. and even change the speed. Right here, remember, this is just using the default animation and the default approach. So now I'm gonna add it as a simple animation, make it even a little smaller so that they don't look like they're synchronized, 0.80, and make sure that they're playing. And now if you play, there it is. So you see, it looks like it's, maybe I should rotate it a little more, probably something like that, and bring it a little higher. Now let's see. This looks pretty good. I love the way that it is coming out. And if you see, now if you stop it, let me rename the state machine so that it looks more consistent. And then if I embed it or something, I should be able to see the name appropriately. Or remove the background. And now this looks pretty good. And I can now embed this anywhere on top of anything. If I play the state machine, you see, because I have nested animations, the nested animations, they just play accordingly. If they're in a loop, they will just continue playing in a loop. I don't have any animations per se within this artboard, which is okay, but at least I was able to accomplish this. And with that, I think we've already completed all the elements that will make up our little application that will bring this character to life. We've already created the title with the bubbles. We created the full character with moving eyes, moving mouth, and the moving limbs. We were able to create the options for the hats. We created like these 3 little hats. We created these 3 buttons right here, the jump, the wave, and the save name. We created this little peeking character right from the hole, from the ground. We created this little icon that we will use not only to trigger the form that could change the name of your character, but at least we were able to create all the assets. Now we'll bring it home by introducing inputs and listeners. And that is actually what's going to be the connection between designers and developers, because we're going to be creating the hooks and the necessary elements that connect your animations to code, and now you can bring those animations to life. By doing listeners, you're going to be able to listen to user gestures such as hovers, touches. You're also going to be able to programmatically launch these animations, bring your character to life, make it do whatever you want. You can change the options of the accessories that the character can be wearing, and all of that we're going to be addressing in the next video. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. We definitely covered a lot. I hope that you guys were able to follow along and complete some of this, even with your own characters. But I hope that you guys enjoyed it. So stay tuned for the next video where we're going to be bringing inputs and listeners, and we're going to wrap up that piece to establish the connection between designers and developers. Stay tuned for the next video. Thank you so much. Hey everyone, I'm Roman. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please make sure to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on other Flutter content coming my way. Thank you so much for your support. Also, don't forget to follow me on social media